As an officer of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, would you please be upstanding to receive Deputy Mayor of Oldham Metropolitan Borough, Councillor Eddie Moose.
Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. Before we resume the meeting that was adjourned on the 18th of December 2024, could I ask all present to please treat everyone in this chamber with respect and to refrain from name-calling and personal insults, which should not play any part in the proceedings tonight. May I also remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be streamed live on a webcast from the Council's website and Oldham Community Radio. The Council has a commitment to conduct its full council business in an environment that is welcoming, secure and safe for members, employees and visitors. It is important that the meetings are conducted in a safe and fair manner. All persons present at meetings should be treated with courtesy and respect. This includes members of the public, elected members, employees and visitors. Behaviour, language or actions that impact public safety, cause disruption and or adjournment to the course of the business at meetings are not acceptable. Members of the public are therefore asked to note the public meeting protocol, which is also available on the Council's website, and elected members are reminded to note the elected members protocol and of the members' code of conduct, which provides details of expected principles of behaviour. Item 1. Apologies. I have received apologies for absence from the Mayor, Councillor Chauhan, and from Councillors Adams and Sharp. Are there any other apologies? Before we proceed, I would like to read out the following statement that I have received from the Mayor. He says, "Please accept my sincerest apologies for not being able to attend tonight's Reconvened Council meeting. Unfortunately, my youngest daughter had an accident at school resulting in serious injuries requiring 24-hour support. Thank you for your kind understanding and well wishes. They are appreciated." And I'm sure we all send our best wishes to the Mayor. Item 2. The minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 24th of October have been circulated previously with the agenda pack. At the meeting of the Council on the 18th of December, Councillor Gafford referred to inaccuracies in the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November 2024. Minute 9 refers, therefore, an updated version of these minutes have been circulated around the chamber this evening. On the 18th of December, the Liberal Democrats requested an amendment to the minutes of the 6th of November meeting to reflect the places for everyone discussion. The proposed amendment has been checked against the meeting transcript and the text of the report, and the amendment cannot procedurally be accepted as an accurate record of the debate. Therefore, the minutes remain as printed in the updated version issued to Council for agreement. However, on this topic, as Deputy Mayor, I would like to make the following statement. In July, this Council debated a motion proposing a request to the Secretary of State to revoke the Places for Everyone plan for houses and jobs as it relates to Oldham. Instead, Council approved an amended motion, the resolution of which required officers to provide a further report back to the Council. A series of members' workshops were held in September 2024, and subsequently a further report was brought to Council in November 2024. That report recommended that Council not write to the Secretary of State, but did not include a recommendation or option to write requesting that revocation. While the report was not supported by Council, Council were not given the opportunity to vote to write to the Secretary of State. However, as a result, and following external legal advice, I can confirm that no resolution has yet been taken in this chamber to write to the Secretary of State. For this matter to be taken further, a new motion or report would need to be brought to Council for consideration and decision.
Councillor
Al-Dami, yes.
As a point of personal explanation, myself who brought forward the amendment, I understand what we're talking about in terms of the procedure, and I've talked to the Chief Executive about this. Where we clearly agree is that in the report there should have been a statement to write to the Secretary of State. That should have been an option in order to resolve this. Where we disagree is that I think that is a breach of the Constitution. The original motion that was brought forward specifically requested that we write to the Secretary of State. By ending up in a situation where that is not an option, that would be a breach of the Constitution. It negates the original motion. We actually brought forward, and I'd like this as a matter of record, we brought forward 2 amendments to the report that was brought forward, which would have made it possible to write to the Secretary of State, and therefore would have rectified that. Neither of those amendments were accepted. Now, I have to say, I'm quite angry that we're in this position. We're 6 months on now from when this was brought forward in July last year. We all knew that we were discussing whether or not we should write to the Secretary of State and request to come out of places for everyone. And 6 months later, we're in the same position we were before we brought the original motion. And I regard that as a real failing on behalf of the Council, on behalf of the procedure, and on behalf of the residents who think this is important. And I think that this is an indication of something that goes wrong too much here. That we end up in a situation where people just do not feel listened to. You know, it was clear what the intention was, and we've ended up in a situation where all those voices have not been heard. And that's the same on this as it is in many other situations. So I see people in the gallery, I see people on the benches, I see officers, I see the people of this town want the best for Oldham, and far too often, as is the case here, they end up not being heard. So that's why I disagree with the situation we're in. That's why I disagree with the minutes. And I hope that going forward, people can take more time to put together things that ensure that everyone is properly heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Al-Dami. I think we note your comments. Thank you. Now, please, can Council agree that the minutes of the Council meeting...
Mr Mayor, can I request a recorded vote on the minutes, please?
Yeah, okay. Please, can Council agree that the minutes of the Council meeting held on the 24th of October 2024 and the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November 2024 be approved, subject to the above-mentioned amendment to the minutes, minute 9 of the 6th of November meeting.
Councillor Akhtar. Councillor Al-Hamdani.
Against.
Councillor Ali Mohan. Councillor Ali Zahir. Councillor Arnott, Dave. Councillor Aslam. Councillor Azad. Councillor Ball. Councillor Bashworth. Councillor Bishop.
Against.
Councillor Brownridge. Councillor Byrne.
Against.
Councillor Charters. Councillor Chauhan. Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Davis. Councillor Dean. Councillor Gaffor. Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Hamlet.
Against.
Councillor Harkness.
Against.
Councillor Harrison. Councillor Hince. Councillor Hindle.
For.
Councillor Hoban. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hurley. Councillor Hussain Aftab. Councillor Hussain Feeder. Councillor Hussain Junaid. Councillor Hussain Sajid. Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Islam. Councillor Jabbar. Councillor Kenyon.
Against.
Councillor Cowser. Councillor Lancaster. Councillor Malik. Councillor Marland.
Against.
Councillor McLaren. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Nasheem. Councillor Navesy. Councillor Quigg. Councillor Rustich. Councillor Shah. Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Sykes. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wahid. Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Woodvine.
Against.
And Councillor Moores.
Fours have it. Item 3, declaration of interest. Due to the receipt...
Mr Mayor, could I just ask what the scores on the doors are?
$31 for, 25 against. Yeah, correct. Item 3, declaration of interest. Due to the receipt of a number of enquiries from members of the borough, due to the receipt of a number of enquiries from members, the borough solicitor is granting a dispensation that will permit all members to participate in the discussion and voting on item 11, motion 2, ethical disinvestment from fossil fuels and arms by the Greater Manchester Pensions Fund, which is being proposed by the Oldham Group. Are there any other declarations of interest from members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting? Can members declare any matters to the meeting? Thank you. Item 4, urgent business. The Borough Solicitor has notified by email on the 19th of December 2024 that the Conservative Group's proposed amendment to the two motions at agenda item 10, notice of administration business, have been withdrawn. Item 5, communications relating to the business of the Council. It is with sadness that I refer to the recent passing of former councillor Alan Griffiths, who represented the Shaw ward between 1986 and 20... That's that. No, sorry, there's an error there. I'm not sure what date that should be. He represented the Shaw ward. and who served as Mayor in the borough in 1996 to 97. I've been notified that the members wish to speak to say a few words. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I think you find Alan served for about 16 years, just off the top of my memory. Yeah, that sounds about right. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to speak about this matter, which I think I'll find quite difficult. Today we gather to remember and pay tribute to a truly remarkable man, Alan Griffiths. Alan was not just a friend to many of us and to me, but to me he was a mentor, a leader and a source of inspiration. For me personally, Alan was special in so many ways, but more of that later. First elected in 1987, Alan served on a variety of roles, had an excellent attendance record on Education Committee, Social Services, Parental Rights, Environmental Health, Building Services, Licensing Sub, Tommyfield Sub. Some gritty stuff going on in them, I can tell you. Competing Services Committee and Personnel, to name but a few. He became Deputy Mayor in 1995 and Mayor the year later. He also helped establish and was a founder member of Sean Crompton's Parish Council and laid the foundation for Oldham's Youth Council. His commitment to supporting and empowering young people was immensely powerful and a legacy that lives on, and he changed in the lives he changed, just like mine. He was one of those people who got me involved in the Liberal Democrats, so he has much to answer for. He was my youth club leader when I was young, and throughout that period he moulded and influenced my life in ways I didn't understand until I grew up much older. You can't put a value on what that means. He was probably witness to one of my many moments as a teenager, such as my first girlfriend. He played a key role in shaping who I am today, and I know many others can say the same. His influence was profound, and it was a privilege to walk alongside him in life and politics. I first got involved in politics in 1985, supporting Alan. He asked me to help out. I later became his agent in his successful election campaign. He won, and it was a great feeling to have supported somebody I knew and was in it for the right reasons and would do some good. The following year I ran for election, was very pleased to have Alan's support, and together we served as ward colleagues. Alan was a solid colleague, always showing me the importance of what's doing right for our community. Don't get me wrong, we had our moments and disagreements. For me, a real test is you can fight over something like cat and dog, but then come to a common view or agree to disagree. Only something you can do with real friends. As Councillor Alan achieved so much, and much of it was for individuals, especially in connection with homelessness and housing. I will resist the lengthy list of other things he did, but mention just one that's topical in the news at the moment. He helped re-establish the lamp on the big lamp roundabout, and Alan used his gas connections, where he worked, to get it installed and lit by gas, something that took many months of work behind the scenes, and dealing with highways, street lighting and British Gas is never straightforward, as most of us know. Beyond politics, Alan's dedication to his community was evident in everything he did. From his early years as a member of the Boys Brigade to his leadership role in Shaw and Ayside Congregational Church, he was always there for others. Alan was a proud family man. He and Irene, his beloved wife, created a warm, welcoming home where family and friends gathered with joy. His love of his daughters, Janet and Carol, and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren was immense. I will always remember Alan for his calm words and clarity of focus on what was important and his ability to stay on mission. Most of all, I will be forever thankful to the guidance both he and his wife Irene gave me as a young man, and for the very clearly helping me establish my moral compass. I'm sure there are hundreds of other young people from Shaw and Crompton who attended the Young People's Fellowship, as I did, would say exactly the same. He leaves behind a legacy, not only in the community, but also in all of us who had an honour of knowing him. Rest in peace, and thank you, Alan. You will be missed, but you'll certainly never be forgotten.
Thank you, Councillor Sykes. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Alan was really a great friend to me. I served as his deputy, and the warmth and welcoming and helpful nature that Alan had was a tremendous help to me, and not only me, but to all the people that he came to contact, particularly in his mayoral year. He was a warm man, a really pleasant man, a man that he could relate to almost everybody he came across and met. He was an extremely dedicated councillor, and particularly to his constituents. He was a really good friend and a thorough investigation of any problems that they had. So it's a sad day, and what I do remember is a great man who had a wonderful life, and my condolences go out to all his family and all his friends, and I certainly will always remember Alan. Thank you.
Councillor Hinds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't know Alan personally, but he had an excellent reputation within the community. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of the current Town Council and its members, we're deeply saddened by this news, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family at this time. But I will say, Councillor Alan's legacy will continue with the continued development from the Parish Council to Town Council going forward, and he will always be remembered for the positive thing he's done within our community. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I first met Alan at the Victorian weekend where we had the rally, the car rally, and he was swanning around in his mayoral gowns and talking to every single person, it felt like. And then he came over to me and my daughter, and he started speaking to us, and we'd never met him before. And he said, "Why have you come here?" And I said, "Well, you know, I live in Shaw, and my daughter wanted to see all the vehicles, and I like cars as well anyway." And then he went off. Little did I know, 10 years later, I would be on the parish council, and Alan would be one of the independents, let's say, on there at the time. I joined as an independent, and then I became chairman. And when I became chairman, you were allowed to change some of the protocols. So you didn't have a break. I decided we wouldn't have a break during a meeting so that we could have a cup of tea, coffee. It took us half an hour and we lost thread. So I said, have it at the beginning of the meeting. Anyway, it got to the press, and the press got hold of it, and the headline was, "Storming a teacup at the parish council." And I just think today, you know, we've had more storms in teacups at the town council and the former parish council as well. But that always sticks in my head, because every time I saw him after that, he would always say to me, "Can I have a cup of coffee?" And I'd say no, and he'd go, "I'm going to the press." So anyway, he was a really lovely man, and he's left behind a lovely, lovely family. They are all, and loads of friends, and friends in this chamber as well. And I'll sorely miss him, and the memories from Alan, from the parish council, and his time as the mayor will go on, and I'm so sad about this. Thank you very much.
Would any other member like to speak? Thank you to all those who have spoken. There is a book of remembrance outside. in the corridor that you can sign if you wish. Will Council now join me in observing a minute's silence in memory of former Councillor Griffiths? Thank you. Continue with item 5. I wish to report to Council that Councillor Graham Sheldon has resigned from the Conservative group and will henceforth sit as an independent member. Councillor Pam Byrne has taken over as the acting leader of the Conservative group. The next item, Councillor Woodvine has been in contact with the Mayor. I understand that Councillor Woodvine would like to give a statement to the Council. Thank you. Councillor Woodvine.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I respect the authority of the Mayor. I respect the traditions of this Council, and I support the efforts to restore public order to our meetings of full Council and to our borough. In that conciliatory spirit, I apologise to Councillor Hinds and colleagues across this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodvine. I now have... Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Max for his apology, which I take in sincerity for its meaning and content. I'd also like to further apologise to the members in this chamber and beyond for my unacceptable outburst to comments made. I think it's important that everyone in this chamber remembers we set the standard, and the behaviour we set in the standard we set in this chamber influences the standard we set in this chamber influences the behaviour outside. So once again, I'd like to thank Max for his apology and sincerely give my apologies to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you to both members for those words. Thank you. And I would ask members of the public, please do not interrupt the meeting. Right, thank you. Moving on to the next point. Two groups of survivors have contacted us and their advocate. Two groups of survivors and their advocates have contacted us and have asked us to read out two separate short statements, which I will now read out. Statement 1. The past few months have been a very difficult time for us since a decision was made for Oldham to run their own independent inquiry. In addition to this, the past 2 weeks have been even more stressful, triggering and upsetting, having to watch the world's media descend on our small town over such an emotive and extremely personal issue. Senior politicians have been making decisions on our lives and who they are aiming to try to find a solution to suitably address the suffering and exploitation the victims and survivors have endured in Oldham for decades. We are aware we'll never see a decision that everyone will agree on. Whilst we hoped for and continue to fight for a national inquiry, we appreciate they have come up with a compromise. Whilst we will continue to fight for a victims-led national inquiry, for now we are satisfied that our voices are finally being heard. Although we will continue the fight in a way that works for us to lobby for changes we feel are necessary in shaping a suitable inquiry. Our biggest priority is to hope we can achieve that to be a statutory one. Our whole ordeal has been traumatic enough without the extra stress and agitation of having to watch media footage containing claims of help and actions that didn't happen and that we have not received. We've even been put in the position where certain media interviews are talking on matters that directly concern us without prior warning, consultation or agreed involvement. It's caused a decline in our mental health and has had serious knock-on effect to our children and families. We don't take kindly to this, having already feeling unheard for so many years. Those that have assisted us have stayed firmly out of the spotlight, remaining supportive and providing us with the help we need. We hope as a town now that we can start on a new journey and let the ones doing the real work behind the scenes continue and try to bring some closure and answers for those desperately in need. We are hoping for and seeking a peaceful time whilst things unfold. That is the end of Statement 1. Statement 2. Early last week, ourselves, Samantha and Emma, and they have given permission for their names to be given, attended a meeting with Kemi Bandinock. Following that meeting, we met with Jess Phillips. After much consideration, we are still not happy with the overall decision, but are happy to continue with a local Telford inquiry. Going forward, we have multiple meetings with MPs and officials. We are currently in talks with numerous survivors and are currently in the process of setting up a survivors committee where survivors and only survivors have a voice. We are also in the process of setting up a family support group so families have equal support. Moving forward, we hope the Council remain transparent and politics are kept aside and the far right stop using this for their own agenda. As we move forward, us survivors and victims need to be kept updated throughout each stage of the process, regardless of how little it may be. Please, can members of the public remain respectful, as this is solely about survivors and victims. Survivors and victims are the start and heart of this inquiry. Thank you for your understanding. That is the end of the second statement. Thank you for that. There will be no discussion or comments on this from the floor. Moving on to the next item in this part of the agenda. A reminder, with regard to item 11, notice of opposition business. I am proposing that the times for this item be allocated as follows. Liberal Democrat motion, 10 minutes. Oldham Group motion, 10 minutes. Independent motion, 10 minutes. Item 6. There are no petitions for this meeting of the Council to consider. Item 7. The Youth Council are unable to attend the meeting this evening, therefore their motion will be deferred for a future meeting. We now move on to item 8, public questions, and we have 15 minutes for this. This part of the agenda is public questions, where Council will consider all questions submitted in the order received. Once the time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right of reply to answers given. I will be reading out the questions. If the time limit has expired and a member of the public has submitted a question, the response will be published on the Council website. The first question is from Shona Farmworth. What are the plans for accessible homes for those with visible and non-visible disabilities? As we, the public, do not know what the plans are around the lack of accessible home stock within the Council, as the Tommyfield Market should become this space. I call upon Councillor Taylor, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Decent Homes, to reply. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Shona for your question. All newly constructed dwellings have to be built to the accessible and adaptable standard by law, so new homes being built will be easier to adapt for use by those with visible and non-visible disabilities. The Council's local plan is in the final stages of development and may include further planning policies to provide homes specifically for those with disabilities, and we would welcome input and suggestions on how this could be done as we progress through the final stages of consultation. And to that end, I would undertake to email Ms Farmworth about her specific ideas and suggestions so that we can review them as part of this ongoing work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. The next question is from Lewis Farmworth. What support for full-time unpaid carers are available, as the government budget left out full-time unpaid carers living on £81.90 for 90 plus hours a week? We provide care and we are struggling. We have to choose whether to pay bills or whether to eat. I call on Councillor Brownridge to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. We have a strong commitment to carers to support them in their caring role. We've put together a comprehensive package of support to make sure that no Oldhamer goes hungry or cold this winter. We've used household support funding from the government to bolster our offer. This includes funding our Warm Homes team to provide emergency fuel vouchers for prepaid meters and to provide advice and guidance on reducing energy consumption. We've invested in emergency supermarket vouchers to support residents to purchase food and essential items, as well as funding Oldham Food Bank to maintain stock levels. We will contact Mr Farmworth and offer support for schemes that he's eligible for. Additional support for carers includes support for the carers service who are able to complete an updated carers assessment, an option to contact adult social care for the cared for to request or a reassessment if it's felt this is appropriate. We'd also advise that you contact Age UK and Citizens Advice Bureau to check you on the right benefits and if there are additional support services you can approach. So if we do require further support, please contact our helpline. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brownridge. The next question is from Phillida Ship. Could the Cabinet Member for Decent Homes explain what the process would be for developing a new local plan if Oldham withdraws from Places for Everyone? How long would it take from starting the process again to the adoption of a plan, and how much would it cost? What restraints would there be on developers applying to build on green belt and local green space while the local plan is being drawn up? I call on Councillor Taylor to reply.
Thank you, Phillida, for your question. If Places for Everyone was revoked for Oldham, the Council would need to start a brand new local plan, which would need to include the new higher housing and employment targets set by government. This new approach would involve several stages of public consultation, starting with a fresh call for sites and a review of the green belt, because there is not enough brownfield land available to meet the new higher requirements. We would need to consult on the options and opportunities, then again on the draft plan, and then again on the final plan before submission for examination and adoption. Overall, this process is likely to take around 5 years, depending on the feedback and engagement from the different consultation stages. With regards to the cost for producing a new plan, this would be in the region of about £500,000 for the evidence base and examination, with additional costs for officer time over this time period. Crucially though, in the meantime, without places for everyone, the council would not be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and so even Greenbelt and local green spaces would potentially be vulnerable to applications for housing development if they cannot demonstrate that they are if they can demonstrate that they are sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Next question is from Mike Rook. I read in the Mill that Councillor Sykes is justifying his support for withdrawing from Places for Everyone. He said, I'd like to think we have all these people sitting on the boundary of Oldham waiting for this to happen. But we haven't. If we were in a place where we had plenty of developers and planning applications, I'd be a little bit more worried. Can the Cabinet Member for Decent Homes confirm which developers made representations at the planning inquiry seeking to get sites currently protected from development included or extended? I call on Councillor Taylor to reply.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Rook. So, yes, absolutely, be in no doubt that big developers would be delighted at the thought of Oldham coming out of Places for Everyone. There is prime green belt across Oldham that could be developed at the click of their fingers with no consideration for proper infrastructure, which we would be powerless to prevent. What is happening in Liberal Democrat Stockport is simply a glimmer of what could happen here in Oldham, where there is so much more green space that is easy to develop without the protection of Places for Everyone. And the developers aren't keeping this a secret, as you will see from their responses to the planning inquiry for Places for Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. The next question is from Anna Roberts. Everyone agrees that the priorities for Oldham are to build on previously developed land, brownfield sites, and increase the numbers of affordable and social homes. Oldham Council has increased the number of brownfield sites in the town centre and by adopting the Mills strategy. Are there other brownfield sites that haven't already been identified and included in the SHLAA and Places for Everyone? And what is the projected land supply over the next 10 years compared with the revised housing targets? Where will these homes be built if brownfield sites don't exist? I ask Councillor.
Thank you, Hannah, for your question. So every year the Council updates the following documents: the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, known as the SHLAR, the Brownfield Land Register and the Housing Land Supply, to ensure that they reflect the most up-to-date position and feedback from landowners, developers and agents. As part of this process, new sites may be added if they are considered deliverable and developable, including those submitted through the Council's open call for sites. Including numerous calls for brownfield sites to be put forward during the many rounds of consultation for Places for Everyone. However, no sites were put forward by those who are incorrectly claiming we can meet our targets without building on the Greenbelt. As of the 1st of April 2024, there was land to accommodate approximately 8,230 homes over the next 10 years, including greenfield sites. This figure drops to only 6,048 homes when including sites that are brownfield. The government adopted a new standard method for calculating housing requirements just before Christmas, and these would require Oldham to deliver 910 homes a year, which equates to 9,100 homes over 10 years. This is significantly higher than the average annual requirement under Places for Everyone, which is currently 680 homes a year. As both the adopted Places for Everyone housing requirement and the government's new housing requirement cannot be met on deliverable and developable brownfield sites alone, Oldham has to enable development on greenfield sites as well to ensure there is enough housing for all. So this would increase pressure on our protected open spaces and greenbelt land under the new housing requirement. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Councillor Taylor. Next question is from Dominic Wall. Could the Cabinet Member for Decent Homes estimate the cost to Oldham of turning down planning applications for housing which are later approved at appeal? Is it possible to say, for example, what the cost to the Council would be of turning down an application to build on hanging cheddar which was later approved at appeal? I call upon Councillor Taylor to respond.
Thank you for your question, Mr Wall. So it isn't possible to accurately estimate what appeal costs may be, as each planning application is different and the application for costs by an appellant will vary depending on the specific matters covered in an appeal and whether the appeal is heard by a public inquiry or not. However, where an application involves a large housing development and the appeal is held through a public inquiry, it would be expected that the appeal costs would usually involve a six-figure sum, i.e. hundreds of thousands of pounds, if the appeal is upheld, and these costs are awarded against the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Question 7 from Catherine Phillips. Please, could the Cabinet Member for Decent Homes confirm what would happen to the 97.5% of Oldham's greenbelt currently protected by Places for Everyone in Oldham if we withdraw from the plan? Thank you, Councillor Taylor, to respond.
Thank you, Catherine, for your question. So currently 97.5% of our greenbelt land is protected under Places for Everyone. But if we withdraw, all of that is now under threat. We can see what is happening in Stockport, and our land is so much better here in Oldham, and developers are sitting in wait, hoping for the chance to be able to build on those protected sites. This protection is lost because it means we wouldn't have an up-to-date development plan and we would need to create a new one. As I said earlier in the answer to a previous question, this would take around 5 years, and in the meantime we would be expected to deliver more homes than what we do currently under Places for Everyone due to the protection, as explained in an earlier question, putting even more greenbelt at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Next question is from Diane Rawle. Could the relevant Cabinet Member please tell me why, even if people object to large masts being put in certain locations, the permitted developments still ride roughshod over residents in this borough? Also, why is it that officers of this council, who apparently work for us and the borough, quite happily have a weekly meeting with IX but feel that it isn't necessary or want to meet with residents who are rightly concerned about this issue and about IX acting, as has been found out in the past, in contravention to health and safety laws? I call on Councillor Taylor to reply.
So thank you, Diane, for your question. So this is a complicated area of planning law, but essentially our hands are tied. In summary, the national rules about these permitted development rights means there are only very specific circumstances where we can intervene. All of the details on this are on our website if you want to understand the technicality of it, and it's just too much detail to go into in terms of answering the question here and now. But what we absolutely have done is to ensure that where IX Wireless have been doing things which are unsafe, we have suspended their work until they make that right. With regards to meetings with residents, this does happen, as both officers and councillors have met with various local residents when it has been requested or needed. Officers and councillors also engage extensively on email with residents, and we acknowledge the local frustrations and concerns being raised. But as I say, in reality, we do have limited powers in this area. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. But it's quite a long question. So it's from Peter Webb, and it's, I would like to ask the relevant Cabinet Member the following questions. Back in May 2024, I voted for my local Labour councillor based on the promises made in a leaflet distributed to residents of North Chadderton. The leaflet stated that £50,000 would be allocated for road safety improvements around St Herbert's School and the cemetery of Middleton Road. It has now been 6 months since the councillor's re-election, and residents, including parents, have yet to hear any updates on these plans. Could you please confirm if any progress has been made, or if there are any concrete plans to follow through on this commitment, or was this simply pre-election promise with no intention of being fulfilled? Additionally, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and commend St Herbert's School for their proactive effort to keep children safe in the absence of these promised improvements. Would the Council join me in congratulating the school for their initiative? I call on Councillor Goodwin to respond.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Peter Webb for his question. Taking his points in reverse order, many thanks to him for commending the work being undertaken by St Herbert's School, which of course the Council will endorse. I can confirm that progress is being made to review the road safety concerns around this school. Council officers have been communicating with ward members and St Herbert's School directly on various options available to tackle the concerns being raised. Officers are currently developing the details on the road safety scheme, and public consultation on the proposals will commence early in the new year. We will ensure there is an update provided to parents via the school newsletter, and can I ask ward members to assist with ensuring local residents are kept informed of the progress, please.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. That's the end of that section, and we're now moving on to item 9, reports of the Leader and Cabinet Member, for which we have 90 minutes for this. There are 90 minutes set aside for this item. Each Cabinet Member will be permitted up to 4 minutes to present their reports, with a further 6 minutes maximum for questions from non-executive members. I call on the Leader and Building a Better Oldham portfolio, including the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 14th of October 2024 and the 18th of October 2024, and the meeting of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority held on the 25th of October 2024. Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'm delighted to stand here today and move my report. In Oldham, Mr Mayor, we always look to the future with an eye on the past. Our history and heritage informs and inspires us as we look forward with a sense of optimism and hope for the future of our great borough. So I want to start my portfolio report today by highlighting one of our heritage areas that I know members across the chamber are passionate about, and that's the Oldham Coliseum. In early December, we announced Tilbury Douglas as the lead contractor for the refurbishment works at Farebottom Street. They're our partners on the old library as well, and they have been absolutely fantastic. The care, the attention to detail, and the investment in the community has been second to none. I know they're going to do a fantastic job with our Coliseum as they bring it back in life for Panto season this year. And speaking of the old library, I recently went on a tour with Oldham Theatre Workshop alumni with our very own Doctor Who star Millie Gibson, as well as actor Noah Valentine and musician Seb Lowe, to see progress on Oldham Theatre Workshop's new home in the old library space. It's coming along fantastically, and I can't wait for us to move over there later in the year. We've safeguarded another one of our heritage buildings after finally getting the compulsory purchase of the Prudential building on Union Street over the line, and that again is going to be something that's going to be acknowledged and celebrated by many people, not just in this chamber but across the borough. And that's after years of trying to engage with the previous owners and years of the decision sitting on a desk in Whitehall under the previous government that simply didn't care enough. Work will begin to make the building safe and watertight before renovations take place to bring it back into use. It's yet another Oldham landmark that this administration has saved and safeguarded. Our heritage buildings are one of the things that make Oldham special, and it lies at the heart of the transformation of all our town centre projects. The rebirth of Spindles is also a critical part of that regeneration, and I'm thrilled to inform Council that this is now multi-award winning. Dalkia Engineering won Project of the Year at the Building and Engineering Services Association Awards for their work on the Spindles workspace, and Wilmot Dixon won the Environmental Initiative of the Year Award at the National Project Excellence Awards in 2024. Council will remember that a key pillar of both the Oldham Plan and our corporate plan is a green and growing economy. So this is not just a win for Wilmot Dixon or the previous project, but it's a testament to our commitments to a greener and more sustainable Oldham. Meanwhile, in November of last year, Cabinet approved the Town Centre Development Framework after a successful community engagement programme over the summer. This will be used to guide how our partnership with Muse moves forward, inform planning decisions and developments in the town centre, and it will help us to hold Muse accountable. From the Civic Centre to Mumps, the power of transformation will be seen across our borough, with new homes, new green spaces, new retail, new business and a new cultural quarter. But most of all, the regeneration of our town centre will create new hope. We know that regenerating our town centre isn't just about shiny new buildings or even just about renovating old ones. To boost our local economy and maximise the outcomes, we know we need to get more Oldhamers and more visitors into the town centre and spending money with local businesses. And we've had some stunning successes over the past few months. Nostalgic Oldham saw footfall increase by 20% compared to last year. Bonfire Night saw an incredible 8,000 people come into the town centre for the fireworks. And for the Christmas light switch on, Spindle saw a 10% increase in footfall compared to last year. And most importantly, Mr Deputy Mayor, along with many delighted children, both the Mayor and I got to meet Bluey. So whilst we have a past we can be proud of and a future that we can look forward to, we also have a present which is full of opportunity and appropriately for the new year, hope. Let's continue to work together to make Oldham a place where our history and future walk hand in hand, creating a vibrant and thriving community for all. Now, more than ever, we can say that Oldham's time is now. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
I call on Councillor Sykes to ask the first of his two questions. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and it'd be remiss of me on the first official time I got to say pass on our sympathies to the Mayor's family, and also can I say it looks like what I call reasoned debate seems to have broken out in the council chamber, and I might poke the bear a bit, but I'm hoping I don't disturb that too much later on. So thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I want to return to something we debated on the minutes. The council voted by 30 to 29 to write to the Secretary of State calling for Oldham to remove from places for everyone as part of the housing strategy. Everybody in the chamber knew what that vote was. That's the way they spoke. It was clear from the speeches on both the Labour side and opposition members. There was no doubt what people thought they were voting for. And instead of honouring or being weaseled out of a democratic decision made by that council, the administration has used what looks like every trick in the book to avoid writing to the Secretary of State. And they think they're being clever, just like they think they're being clever with at least 4 planted Labour questions about this very same issue that we heard in the public question time at the start of this meeting, where hell would freeze over, the world would stop spinning, the sun would stop shining, and what a bad lad Howard Sykes was. I want them to understand that what you're doing by doing this, rather than just writing, and it's your Secretary of State, and you're not confident what the answer might be, you're destroying the reputation of Oldham Borough, not us, and you're making a mockery of local democracy. And you're proving to the people of Oldham that Labour don't care about the views of local people, what's decided in this chamber or their elected representatives when it doesn't suit your agenda. So the question, Mr Mayor, Mr Deputy Mayor, is it the Labour Group's policy that the Council will have to vote and debate once again places for everyone before they write to the Secretary of State just because they didn't like the result last time?
Councillor Shah to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question. And just for the record, I don't think you're a bad lad. I've never thought you were a bad lad. I do respect the way you bring your queries and concerns forward. You've always done it in a dignified manner, and I do appreciate that and recognise that. However, I do think there's some irony in this. If there's something about and a common theme that runs across the chamber, it's when people don't like the outcome of something. They like to say it's a conspiracy or it's wrong, but actually, you've actually given me an opportunity to set the matter straight, to which I'm really thankful for again. So I have to say that I've actually had no involvement in the procedure around the decision not to write to the Deputy Prime Minister to request that we withdraw from places for everyone. It's very clear that the administration agrees with Places for Everyone and would always support it, regardless of when a motion comes forward or not. But the report before Council last time around didn't actually mandate officers to write to the Deputy Prime Minister to request the revocation of Places for Everyone. So quite simply, they didn't, because that's not what it was asked. Rejecting the recommendations of that isn't as simple as approving what I would like to call mystery recommendations that councillors wanted to be there. So it's not about anybody trying to think they're smart or trying to outdo anyone, because actually you can't do that. This forum doesn't lend itself to that. The reality is that you didn't know what you were voting for. The reality is that you were so caught up in the drama of it all that you didn't fully understand what you were voting for. And actually, I'm not going to take responsibility if opposition councillors don't know what they're here for or what they're voting for. That's a job for them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sykes, have you got a second question?
Yes, Mr Deputy Mayor. I thank the leader for her question, and I think we'll agree to disagree on that, like I would do with my former colleague, Alan Griffiths. My second question, I think, is equally as serious. It's about the winter crisis and the problems we're encountering in social care, Mr Deputy Mayor. The NHS is facing, it's not a double whammy, it's not a triple whammy, it's a quadruple whammy in terms of the respiratory diseases that people are getting that is causing emissions, as I understand it, in terms of another winter crisis. Ambulance services are in chaos. I had the joys of visiting our hospital on A&E this weekend, and the whole of the ambulance bay was full as we were still waiting to offload patients and find somewhere for them to be, even if that was on a corridor. Pressure on social care is mounting. There's some evidence from earlier this week, I read somewhere that nearly a third of people in hospital are in hospital because they're waiting for somewhere to be discharged to. And that's not the fault of our social care, it's the fact that repetitive governments have kicked the can down the road. And I'll give you just one statistic that should terrify us all, Mr Deputy Mayor. Late last year, it was revealed that a total of 15 hours each of ambulance time has been wasted this winter already because of long waits outside hospitals trying to hand over patients. The best thing we can do to alleviate pressure on frontline services is to get social care sorted. More people need to be receiving care in the community, not heading to hospital. It's putting it mildly to say that social care services in Oldham are under financial pressure, Mr Deputy Mayor. But what's really dangerous is the impact that Labour government's national insurance hike could have on our services. If common sense doesn't prevail, more essential services will disappear from view for those who rely on them. So I can ask the leader tonight if she agrees, is it time for her government to work with other parties to sort this out? And does she agree that it's important is that people get care based on need and not on what they can afford to pay? Thank you.
Councillor Shah, we are more or less out of time for this, so this will be the, could you keep the reply fairly short, please, and that will be the end of your questions then.
Yeah, I think in the main, I think what the Leader of the Opposition has mentioned, we can all entirely agree with. We know that adult social care has been under increased pressure. We know it's a huge, significant budget challenge, not just for this council, but for councils across the country. And we also know that the issues around the NHS and how it all are unintended consequences and add to the pressures that we're actually facing in our communities as well. And we're all in agreement as well that actually not resolving any of this isn't helpful to anyone. But what I can't do is take any sort of responsibility away from the previous government, because they did leave us in a significant mess. What we have got with the new government is at least people at the end of the phone who are willing to have a conversation to try to understand the pressures of local government across the country. And actually, in my capacity as a member of the LGA local government executive, which is cross-party, by the way, so we all are united in our call to understand and actually call for greater funding. And whilst the government has in its short time, giving us a relief through the recovery budget and in other ways, I am really, really hopeful that that will continue. And I absolutely think that this is something that we should all be united on. And I would like to give Councillor Sykes a more detailed response that I will send to him in writing, because I do agree with the sentiments of a lot of what he said. But actually, they have gone into a mess 14 years of cutting local authorities in the way that they have, in the brutal way that they have, has not been easy on anybody across the country. So thank you for raising it. We'll look into it, but agree with most of that. But actually, I think to point the blame at somebody who's only been in government since July is actually just playing political football with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. That's the end of your questions. And now we'll move on. I invite the Cabinet members to present their reports. Again, maximum 4 minutes for the presentation.
Sorry, point of order is, are we not going to the other questions? I've got a couple of important questions.
There's no time for any other questions for the leader.
So there's only two. Surely there should be one for us and one for the Conservatives.
It's timed. The timing is 6 minutes, and we are working to the times.
I understand this time, but obviously there was some very important...
The time has run out. If people...
Can we move extension, please, somebody?
No, we can't move an extension. If people wish to make a speech while they're asking a question, it takes up the time, I'm afraid.
But,
so we are now...
Sorry, point of order, Mr Mayor. What it is, we were
it's
asking the question to the leader, Deputy Mayor.
There's no time.
How much time do we get? Surely
6 minutes. 6 minutes.
Mr Deputy Mayor.
6 minutes only for one. This is a question to the leader.
Second.
6 minutes.
Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm happy to take a question from, if it's a question just to the leader, but if you're saying there's no time and it's a procedural thing, that's fine. But if you're asking me...
It is procedural. The time is 6 minutes, and we will overrun.
More than this before, surely. I'm sure this is not the right way. It's a question from the opposition. Yes, each leader has a question. Thank you. We'll second that.
I'm not gonna. So look, I think there's some confusion in this in terms of like what we for the previous constitution, which was where at discretion I afforded the leaders of the main opposition group to ask me a question, Mr Deputy Mayor. Okay. But then we a meeting with the mayor, we said that we weren't going to afford that anymore because that was used to like create tension and abuse. But actually, I am happy to allow Councillor Gafford to ask his question as leader of his group. Right, but I will not be extending that any further to anybody else.
Can I just say, we have got time constraints on this meeting, an important business to get through. So can we keep it to questions and not speeches?
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a speech because I think it's quite important, to be quite honest with you, Mr Deputy Mayor. And we've seconded it. You spent long enough discussing it, Mr Deputy Mayor, surely. Let's go through questions. Right, okay, so...
Point of order.
Finally...
Well, we don't need that because we're going to allow time for the questions.
Can we have a vote then, please, Mr Deputy Mayor?
Have a vote. Just 1 minute.
Not trying to be awkward.
No, we're not trying. We just want to conform with the...
Okay, I'm just going to ask the question, Mr Deputy Mayor. Right, okay. So, finally, this...
You're right, we'll move for a 10-minute extension, yeah. Okay.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah. So, having a vote. 10-minute extension, a vote.
Yeah, go on, that's agreed. That's with everybody.
Okay. That's agreed. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Councillor Sykes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you everybody for giving me this opportunity. I think it's very important that we talk about this issue. Finally, this Labour administration has come to its senses with great pressure from the rest of this chamber for an independent inquiry. We have all been disgusted by the exploitation and rape of the most vulnerable children in society. Every victim must be heard and appropriate legal action must be taken. The perpetrators are to blame. The rapists are to blame. Those paedophiles are to blame. This is not about one race of people. Wherever or whenever these despicable acts happen, as a group of Muslim councillors on this council, we feel that the perpetrators should be punished to the worst and longest punishments deserved. However, we know that now that many of these vile individuals were never investigated due to the failings of our institutions, whether they are the police, the social services, counsellors, council staff, children care home or safeguarding teams. In many cases, these institutions failed vulnerable white girls for decades. These children were sometimes blamed or shamed or ignored by the very people paid by the taxpayers to protect them. It is also important to note that decades earlier, these same institutions let down young, vulnerable white boys who were abused in care homes. White politicians were implicated in the abuse by these, but these institutions ignored them. And the fact that they were white was never was ignored. The fact that they were white or their religion was never ever mentioned. Whoever these perpetrators are, they need to feel the full wrath of the law. It is really sad to say that we will never live in a world without such crimes. What we can do is to promise to create a better system of listening, reporting, investigating and prosecuting such crimes with the empathy and rigour our children deserve. So my question to Councillor Shah: will the Oldham inquiry be judge-led, similar to the Telford inquiry, to ensure independence and credibility? Will you commit to consulting the full council chamber to reach a consensus on the terms of reference for the inquiry, ensuring a broad and transparent scope? Will the terms of reference explicitly include all relevant institutions such as the police, social services, council departments, politicians, children's care homes and safeguarding teams to ensure systematic failings are comprehensively addressed? Will you ensure that this inquiry is given full legal powers to enforce compliance, including access to any documents or evidence that it requires? And finally, can you confirm that the inquiry will examine both historical and recent cases of institutional failings to identify systematic issues and propose actionable safeguards for the future? Thank you very much.
Councillor Shah.
I have to start off, Mr. Deputy Mayor, by saying I'm really disappointed that we didn't take heed of the statements that came from both groups of survivors today. One of their categoric asks in both of them statements was the politics needs to be taken out of this. And actually, I do apologise if there are any survivors in the room that I'm going to have to now talk about this in the way that I am going to have to, because I can't allow this to be weaponised politically anymore. So the reality is, I don't know where Councillor Gaffor's been for the last couple of weeks, but I think if Home Secretary last week, Yvette Cooper, did make a statement in the House, any discussion actually about sexual abuse and exploitation of children must start and it must end by recognising what the survivors of this horrific form of child abuse have experienced, and an absolute commitment to protect children from abuse now and in the future. It's that twin focus, Mr. Deputy Mayor, on listening to the voices of survivors and the protection of children, which must be the driving force behind the independent inquiry that will be set up. Council will know that we unanimously passed a motion to request Home Office support into historical child exploitation in Oldham. But it's also worth remembering, and this is why I don't want people to rewrite history, but I want to use this opportunity to state facts, because we know we're in an era, unfortunately, where facts don't matter, misinformation and fiction does. So let me just remind people that it's worth them acknowledging that this request actually came from local survivors who were affected by this. They felt that the assurance review had not given them an opportunity to have their voices heard or their individual testimonies and experiences examined. I would also like to reassure Council that since summer, Oldham Council had been working with a group of survivors and those affected by child sexual exploitation to discuss how they could help shape a further local inquiry. Also, the refusal of this national inquiry wasn't new news. Actually, in 2022, Councillor Sykes, the leader of the Lib Dems, had actually written to the previous government asking them for a National Home Office inquiry, and the previous government had refused that then, saying that it was better to do it locally. And there's copies of that letter available. But The reality is, and like I've said, publicly, and every time I've been forced to speak about this, and I use the word forced because I've always respected survivors at the heart of this. And the reality is 1 or 6 or however many there are, one survivor is one too many, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So the reality is on this, that those group of survivors and those affected by child sexual exploitation should be the only voices that matter and should be the ones that inform this. So I can't give Councillor Gafford the assurance, actually, where the terms of reference will start, where they will end, because then that means we're not listening. That was their issue with the previous Greater Manchester Assurance Review, that they felt like the terms of reference were too narrow, they felt like it didn't compel everyone. And I really, really actually do respect that Councillor Gafford thinks I've got more powers than I actually have. I can't compel people to provide evidence. Only the Home Office can do that, which is why I really, really appreciate the announcement by the Home Secretary last week, where she said that she will have Judge Crowther, who I know that the survivors are happy with, because they independently went and met Telford themselves to discuss this, and he will be leading that inquiry. I think that's really, really significant. The recent announcement by the government that Tom Crowther, the KC, will be working on the inquiry, Council will know that he led the Telford inquiry and he has a level of credibility with survivors that I hope will provide additional insurance to survivors and that they will be at the heart of that inquiry. The recent Home Office announcement also said that there would be additional government support and additional funding, and we'll continue to have them discussions with government about funding the inquiry and how that is going to progress. But one thing that I am also proud of is that Oldham now, thanks to these survivors, will be shaping future survivor-led inquiries across the country. That is happening because of them and their voice and their commitment and their proactiveness and everything that they've done and their tireless campaigning on this issue. It might be a small chink of light and hope from this dark era of our borough and our country, but actually it will give them something that they can contribute to and use their voice to provide insight onto the failings of the past. And we have to apologise for the past, but we also have to apologise for how they may be feeling now and the fact that we're having this discussion. I'm also glad that the government is asking Baroness Casey to look at the drivers of this specific type of abuse as part of her review, because abuse doesn't discriminate. Child sexual abuse is perpetrated by people of all races and religions and inflicted on people of all races and religions. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't ask questions about any drivers of this very specific type of offending. We need to do more to understand why this particular pattern of abuse is more prevalent among some groups of men. That's not racism, it's common sense. It's not religion or race that defines these crimes. It's the crimes that define these men. There is no corner in any part of our society for these people. The only place they belong is in prison after facing the full force of justice. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Councillor Byrne, have you got a question? We are running over time now.
I will be brief, Mr. Deputy Mayor. You may recall that I think it must be 2 years ago now, I led for the Conservative group at the debate we had from the, when we had Mayor Burnham, we had the then GMP lead, and we started our progress down this road of the child sexual abuse. Now, I'd like to ask the leader of the council, Councillor Shah, if you will confirm whether you would support the following. You've covered quite a bit of the area, but this is more specific. It's quite short. Will she support our call for a national inquiry, which we've always called for, in the Pakistani heritage rape gangs who have groomed children, not just in Oldham, but in the whole of the UK? Will she confirm the timeline?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think. Councillor Byrne.
Sit down.
Mr. Councillor.
Councillor Shah, can you sit down 1 minute? Councillor Byrne, I think specifically saying what you've just said was not.
Can I just carry on with...
Councillor Quigg, do not interrupt me again, please. Thank you. Councillor Quigg, be silent. Thank you.
Can she confirm that the
Right.
timeline for the local inquiry into the historic cases will...
Excuse
Absolutely, Mr Mayor. If you want to withdraw that remark. That's not a problem at all.
Right, can we...
Confirm
excuse me. I will not accept that comment about the Pakistani gangs. I don't think that's appropriate.
If you wish me to withdraw that, I will withdraw that. But it has been said nationally.
It's got to be a wider inquiry than that.
Right, no. Can she confirm the timeline for the local inquiry into the historic cases of child sexual exploitation in Oldham? And can she confirm that the inquiry in Oldham does not exclude any council officers, councillors or members of the council who were and are still employed by the council? Will the leader of the council demand that the Prime Minister apologise for claiming that those fighting for justice are far right, but are instead trying to do the right thing to get justice? Thank you, Mr Deputy.
Thank you, Councillor Shah.
Once again, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm going to apologise to the survivors who made their statements at the start of this meeting. I think it's really unacceptable that we keep drawing this out and trying to use it politically. It's unfair, it's disrespectful. The only voice that matters is theirs, and they've made it clear. They don't want to hear from me, they don't want to hear from anyone else, and they don't want anyone to try to politically point score. What I'm not going to accept, though, is any kind of division in this. Perpetrators, like I said in my statement, religion and race doesn't define this kind of behaviour. It's the offence, the crime itself that defines these men. And that's the reality of this, and we have to accept it. And what I'm not going to allow, the one thing I will not allow under my leadership is any kind of division. And do you know what? I will not apologise and ask the Prime Minister to apologise for his comments. He takes his responsibility seriously, just like every single member in this chamber should. And that is that we unite communities, we bring people together. And I have said previously, and I don't know because there's something about selective listening from elected members of this chamber, I have said previously, of course we need to look at drivers in certain communities to see what drives them and what drives those patterns of behaviours. We need to look at that. That is really important. But actually, abuse does not discriminate. Everybody is affected by this, and we have to use this and accept what the survivors have asked of us. I cannot give you any assurance. Again, I wish you would just listen, and I cannot give you any assurance about the terms of reference because I am not leading this inquiry. Judge Tom Crowther is. He is a credible individual who knows what he's doing. I am reassured by the Home Secretary's statements. I'm reassured that Baroness Casey will be doing a review in those patterns and those drivers in certain parts of the community. But I also really affirm that there is no community in Oldham of any race, of any religion, of faith, of no faith, that will allow any cover for these horrific men who commit these crimes.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. And now we will move on to the Cabinet reports. I invite Cabinet members to present their reports. A maximum of 4 minutes for presentation and 6 minutes for questions from non-executive members. I call on Councillor Taylor, Deputy Leader, Decent Homes Portfolio, to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So I would like to take this opportunity to supplement my report by further updating members on the winter support offer that has been put in place. So this is a wraparound offer which crosses over into other portfolio areas, but it is a comprehensive support package designed to help any resident that has an immediate need and those who need additional support going forward. Obviously, we all know that Christmas and the following months can be a financially challenging time for many families, but particularly for families placed in temporary accommodation. This year, we targeted support to ensure that everybody had the opportunity to enjoy a warm meal on Christmas Day. Specifically, in order to support families in temporary accommodation who didn't have access to cooking facilities, which was 154 in total, we provided a hug voucher to each of those families. The value of the voucher varied based on the size of the family, but the vouchers were configured so they could be used to purchase a hot meal from a participating takeaway food outlet on Christmas Day. In addition, any families that wished to stay with family or friends over the festive period were able to do so without affecting their homelessness status. They were also offered a hug voucher to provide for an additional family shop, which could be used to contribute towards their family or friends' additional food costs as well. For those families placed outside of the borough, we also provided access to travel vouchers where needed so that families could travel back to Oldham to visit relatives and friends over the Christmas period. And all of this was funded through the Household Support Fund. But going forward, we will continue to provide hug vouchers to households who need emergency support in accessing food at any time of the year, as well as our wider support offer to help families access essential items or other resources and advice. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our helpline team, who completed all of the Holiday Activity Fund phone calls to families living in temporary accommodation and the welfare checks that sat alongside that. Thank you also to Spark Oldham, who delivered free holiday activities for children in temporary accommodation aged between 5 and 14 years over the Christmas period. As well as a range of fun-packed activities, they also provided families with lots of information and signposting to help and support families in a range of different areas. In terms of our severe weather emergency provision, SWEP, this was triggered due to low temperatures towards the end of December and for the first fortnight in January. During this time, our rough sleepers team carried out additional sweeps of the borough, targeting known places for rough sleepers. Anyone found rough sleeping was accommodated in temporary accommodation, and a total of 30 people were accommodated through this period. Although we do have some grant funding to support with this, we have also transferred additional funds to the housing budget as a contribution towards cold weather provision going forward. I think the essence really of my report is that we know that things are difficult for many of our residents right now, particularly at this time of year, but our message is that we are here to help. So if anybody in this chamber or anybody else who may be listening is aware of any resident needing assistance, please ask them to contact the council helpline. And I think it would be helpful probably for members in the chamber if I shared some of this information via email, and I'm happy to do so just to make sure that you fully understand the package of support that we have on offer over the winter period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That was well timed. If people could get to the root of the question quickly, it would help. So I'll call on Councillor Harkness first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I understand that the government is looking to introduce a legal responsibility for councils to provide accommodation for veterans in locations where they have links to a community. However, those plans appear to provide no additional funding to enable the housing to be provided. Whilst the principle of this is to be lauded, is this another instance of central government passing responsibility for issues onto local councils without the required funding, leaving council taxpayers in Oldham faced with the bill when the country as a whole should be ensuring that veterans get the support and housing that they deserve? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor Harkness, for your question. So I think, just to be clear, veterans do already have priority need when it comes to the council's housing register, and I agree that obviously veterans who are in need should have the support. But I think it's fair to say as well, and I'm sure it hasn't escaped your notice, that just before Christmas the government announced the largest ever cash boost, which was almost £1 billion of new funding to tackle, reduce and prevent homelessness services. And as part of that provisional settlement, Oldham Council has received an additional £803,000 for homelessness prevention, and we are part of a pilot scheme now for emergency accommodation reduction scheme. So I do have to disagree with the premise of the question, because I think the government are putting their money where their mouth is. Obviously, in terms of veterans, we will continue to support our veterans in the same way that we do all of our residents through advice, guidance and housing support. But as I say, they are already a priority on the housing register. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Mr Deputy Mayor, with much debate around the government's planning reform and house building targets, would the Cabinet member confirm the following? Within the last 5 years, how many house building applications have been granted? In which districts are such applications being submitted, of how many properties? And how many approved developments have yet to see a spade go in the ground? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So apologies, because I haven't been provided with this in advance. I haven't got the detail to hand, but I'm happy to get all of that information and to provide you with a written response. Thank you.
Councillor Arnott.
For taking this question. In November, the council approved plans to change an apartment block on the site of the former Oddies Bar on Union Street in Royton into a hotel. When concerns from residents about this development were raised by Royton North councillors, we were threatened with legal action. Although Royton is a great town to live in, even I, with somewhat rose-tinted glasses, would struggle to claim that it's a tourist destination. Will the Cabinet member confirm whether she or the council have had any discussion with the developer or the operators of the hotel with regards to the housing of asylum seekers at this property, either before or after the permission for change of use was granted? Thank you.
Councillor Taylor to respond.
So I could confirm that I certainly wasn't involved in any conversation, and obviously as I wasn't involved in any conversation, I'm not able to provide any further detail on this matter. But again, I'm happy to take it away, or I'm happy to have a separate conversation with you about this and your ward colleagues, obviously for Royton North outside of the chamber. But I wasn't party to any of those discussions, so I'm sorry I can't provide any more information at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Harrison.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The Cabinet Member's report outlines good progress in delivering a brownfield first policy and much needed affordable and specialist homes. However, too many families are waiting for permanent homes in temporary accommodation. Can Councillor Taylor explain what changes are planned to reduce the numbers of people needing temporary accommodation mentioned in her report? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Harrison. So, as you are aware, one of the Council's priorities is to reduce the need for temporary accommodation. However, given that we currently have almost 700 households in TA, this change will take some time. And the fact of the matter is that there simply isn't enough suitable or affordable homes for Oldham's residents. In the meantime, and since we declared a number of local solutions to the national housing crisis, these have been accelerated to ensure that we are able to provide quality temporary accommodation facilities for residents in need. And this includes projects like the SHAP, the Single Homelessness Accommodation Project at Foundry Street, and other contracts with providers who can provide access to more suitable and affordable properties. We also have the refurbishment of existing council premises and, where appropriate, the strategic acquisition of properties. In response to the housing crisis, we have been working closely with private landlords, developers and social housing providers to bring forward the delivery of new housing across the borough. This work has included accelerating the delivery of new homes on council-owned sites such as Southlink and, in your own ward, the former South Chadderton school site. A key aspect of these housing plans is the provision of 500 truly affordable homes over the next 5 years. Additional funding investment into the housing team means that we are now able to take a more prevention-led approach to support our residents who find themselves at risk of homelessness when eviction notices or properties are condemned on safety grounds. And we are working hard to ensure that residents are able to stay in their own homes while their concerns are issues are resolved. And I think obviously once the abolition of the Section 21 no-fault evictions finally comes into force under this government, hopefully that will also help to lower the number of families who are presenting as homeless. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And now we'll move on to Councillor Jabbar, Deputy Leader for Value for Money and Sustainability Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'm not going to try to add quite a lot to my report, but just highlight the changes since the report was published. So clearly, the revenue account is a real issue for us, because as previously reported, that we were looking at in the first quarter a £26 million overspend, but in the report you look at month 7 and we were projecting a £19 million overspend. And those are overspend are purely to do with pressure that we're getting in adult social care, children's services and temporary accommodation, as the Deputy Leader previously spoke about. This is faced by nearly all council who have responsibility for those 3 areas. This report was produced before the provisional local government settlement was issued late December, and I'm very, very pleased to say, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that this new Labour government has given us additional £18.6 million, which will help to balance the budget for next year and recognise and understand the issues that we're facing in this area. And I'm very pleased to say that we have a local government minister who actually understands local government finance and is trying to work with the sector to give us the right amount of money so that we can continue. But this £18 million is not going to be enough, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to produce a balanced budget. We will still need to do additional things, find saving and cuts to do that, but it goes a long way to help us to produce a balanced budget. In respect of revenues and benefits, we're moving quite quickly with GovTech, a piece of software which is helping to deliver efficient way of collecting our council tax and business rates. In terms of pension credit, I'd just like to say to all the councillors in this chamber, thank you for joining in the campaign to raise awareness around this particular issue. I'm very grateful that the work you've done, and through that, on average, we reckon that anyone who successfully claims pension credit will receive £3,800 per year, which is a really large amount of money, and the Secretary of State has promised to actually make the application easier. I'm extremely pleased about the work we're doing. We'll continue to do that, and if you need any help, please get in touch and we will provide any support that we can. In respect of a green agenda, Chair, I'm really, really delighted to say that very shortly we'll be on site at Wrigley Head to build our first ground-mounted solar farm. I'm really excited about that. A lot of you in this chamber will know I'm very personally attached to that, and I'm looking forward to holding the solar panels to put it on place and get it generating. So we're making really good progress against that. We're also making very good progress against a low carbon district heating. We're one of the few councils right across the country who's got money to develop this. And I hope that when we get that developed, it will provide low cost energy for residents and businesses right across the town centre. I'll leave it at that, Chair. I'm happy to obviously take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Islam.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can the Cabinet member explain what the benefits to residents will be of the successful bid to the GMCA to fund digital inclusion work across the borough with the aim of increasing access to digital support closer to home? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jawad.
Thank you, Councillor Islam, for your question. I'm delighted to share that following a successful bid to GMCA, we'll be receiving 70k funding in early this month with specific remit to increasing number of Oldham residents who can access digital support within 15 minutes of their home. Building on our comprehensive library offer, we are using the funding to enable partnership approach across the borough, together with Inclusive Bytes, a CIC. Over the next 6 months funding period, Inclusive Bytes will be working with partners across the sector to set up digital hubs and digital champions network so that residents can get digital help closer to where they live. Inclusive Bytes will be providing training to support this, as well as online resources and mapping to show how and where to get support. Further information will be available in the next few weeks. I'm delighted that we have been successful in obtaining this funding, and it will help to make sure that our residents in Oldham access online services. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Councillor Gafoor.
Thank you. Councillor Jabbar, I believe that there's a new financial undertaking of £5 million to Muse. On the 6th of November, Councillor Shah said there was no financial undertaking. Officers have confirmed this new variation to the contract and a new £5 million undertaking to Muse. They've also confirmed that the new payment might not be legal as it could breach procurement rules. And even after paying the £5 million, it doesn't guarantee one apartment to be built. Now, the thing is that can you publish the external legal advice that we've got on the legality of this new financial payment to Muse? And also, how can you throw another £5 million to Muse when we're having budget cutbacks and we're finding it difficult to balance the books? I've asked this question before in this chamber, and I've not really had a response that I'm satisfied with. And also, the officers have confirmed that there's a minimal viability gap of over £160 million on the Muse deal. Why has this never been disclosed to the public, Councillor Jabbar? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Gafoor, thank you for your question. This was discussed at the scrutiny meeting during the call-in session. And whilst the Cabinet report did reference an undertaking, confirmation was provided that this was not the case. There is no implication on the council budget. And what's actually being referred to was the risk sharing. It's not actually, we're not actually giving them any revenue or undertaking of the scheme. So, we've been very clear about this. You've had a full debate about this at the ONS meeting, and nothing's changed there. And we're not giving any money, revenue money to Muse.
But what does an undertaking mean, Councillor Jabbar, if they fail? I'm sorry, if they fail, that means we will be liable for £5 million. Does nobody even care?
Can we let Councillor Jabbar reply, please?
I'm quite happy to have a separate conversation with Councillor Gafoor, but
that he can put in the public domain.
We can say
absolutely,
it here.
Absolutely. You can. What I say, right? You can have a public debate about. You can put it on public. I don't mind. This is transparent. But can I just say, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and for the rest of the councillors, this was discussed at length at the overview scrutiny meeting, and answers were given then. So I'm surprised that you were well. No, so that's fine. No, that's fine. Councillor Gafoor, you're absolutely right to. Write me a question. I will provide you with a full answer. I've given you an answer. I've given you an answer. I've given you an answer. You can't. I've given you an answer already. You can't come back and say you're not happy with my answer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Alandani.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Council has announced the upcoming departure of the Chief Financial Officer, effective from January, and I would particularly like to thank her for her work while she's been here. And good luck to her where she's going. In the run-up to the Budget Setting Council meeting for 25-26, how confident is the Cabinet member that this change in senior leadership within the Directorate will not have any adverse impact on Oldham Borough's finances?
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for your question. Can I also join you by thanking Sarah on behalf of this council for the fantastic work that she's done since she's been here. Obviously, I'm very sorry to see her go, but she's going to her hometown because she wants to support her family. And as a person who likes to support everyone, realize their ambition and support their ambition, I'm very happy with that. In terms of the question that you raised, the substantial, we have a structure where we've got people to support this. So the budget for this year will almost be sorted, because tomorrow evening we are producing the budget book for the Governance and Strategy and Resources Board on the 29th. So most of the work will be actually contained in there. And once it's been published and once it's been scrutinized by that board, it will be ready to move on. Usually at that time of the financial year, most of the work is done. And I'm absolutely convinced that the senior management team, the assistant directors within the finance team, is capable of producing a balanced budget. I wouldn't stand here and take a risk where we had any kind of issues where we couldn't produce a balanced budget. So thank you for raising it, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to thank Sarah for the wonderful work she's done while she's been here, and I wish her very best of luck in her new job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. And now we move on to Councillor Mushtaq, Children and Young People's Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor, sorry. Last year was a very busy calendar year, as you can see from the report, and from every report on my portfolio that comes to this meeting. It's a very challenging portfolio. It takes a lot of time, energy and commitment from myself and my two deputies, who I'd like to thank for their support and input. So thank you, Councillors Harrison and Councillor Navesey, for your ongoing support. It's also an emotionally draining and highly rewarding portfolio, one that wouldn't have been assessed as being a good service by Ofsted last year were it not for the fantastic team we have in place here at Oldham Council. I'd like to put on record my thanks to Julie Daniels, Tony De Crop, Leanne Cooper, Sheila Guerrara, Matt Bulmer, Nick Whitbread and Jenny Davis, head of the virtual school, to name a few, and all the social workers, managers and every member of staff, too many to name here, that don't just see this as a 9-to-5 job, but are fully invested in our children and improving their lives. Thank you also to the leader and chief exec for their support, without which we wouldn't have achieved a good service. I'm also aware of how Councillor Arooj Shah champions the good work taking place in Oldham at a national level through her role as LGA Chair for Children and Young People. I often get feedback at conferences and regional meetings, so thank you for that, Councillor Shah. The two-page report is crammed with what's happening across the portfolio. We have made massive progress on our workforce, having reduced agency social workers from 44.7% in October 2023 to 26.4% in October 2024, and continuing with that trajectory. Our Grow Our Own workforce programme continues to exceed targets and has attracted attention from outside as others are seeking to learn from what we are doing. And you may well have seen the campaign, the social media campaign over the festive period and beyond. As part of Takeover Day, Children in Care took over roles in the council and took part in meetings, including one of my own portfolio briefings. It was an opportunity for them to experience the other side and learn about what's involved should they want to explore a possible career in the council or the service. This was a thoroughly enjoyable experience for all involved, and again, I'd like to thank the organisers and participants. I attended the Christmas parties at one of our residential homes, the Adolescent Support Unit, or the ASU, and the Children in Care party at Rock Street. It was good to see families and staff enjoying the festive period with the children and young people. There was a genuine family feel at each party. I spoke with parents, young people and staff. Being there in that environment reinforced my existing view that all of our staff are fully invested in doing all they can to improve the lives of our most vulnerable children. Despite all the great work that continues to happen, we won't be complacent and will continue to strive for an excellent service. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Aslam, have you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The Labour government's plan for change includes a milestone of 75% of 5-year-olds being school-ready. How is Oldham performing against this target, and what is the plan to achieve or exceed it?
Thank you, Councillor Aslam, for your question. Oldham's good level of development, or GLD, at the early years foundation stage increased from 62.8% in 2023 to 63.6% in 2024. This was a larger improvement than nationally, and the gap between Oldham and the national position has continued to narrow,
from 7.4% in 2018 to 4.1% in 2024. A plan of support to continue to improve outcomes for children at the end of early years foundation stage is in place through schools and our family hubs to support the home learning environment and speech and language development. And you may not be aware, and some members may not be aware, but we were one of 12 opportunity areas across the country back in, I think it was 2018 and just before, and we did achieve a fantastic improvement in the good level of development for our very young children. Sadly, that was halted by COVID when that hit, but we are picking up, although we are still feeling the effects of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Alandani.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. At the September meeting of the Council, Councillor Mushtaq announced that the Council was reviewing the residential model for children's homes and was creating another 3 homes for a further 7 placements. So that would deliver 20 Council-run placements over the next 3 years. At the same time, Greater Manchester has introduced Project Skyline to introduce 10 children's homes across Greater Manchester to accommodate 24 children. And we've had a scrutiny meeting since where there was no information on either of those 2 projects, although there was a long discussion about the current project to deliver 3 homes, and that is going fairly well. I'd like to commend people who've been delivering that. Could the Cabinet member please just, could you confirm, are the 7 placement houses going ahead? When's that starting, or is this separate to Project Skyline? Is it the same thing? And when will either be delivered?
Thank you, Councillor Al-Hamdani, for your question. I can confirm that the additional 8, not 7 placements, will be delivered in 25-26 across 3 new council-run homes, children's homes, with the first home on track to open from April 2025 for 4 placements, while progress continues on homes 2 and 3. As outlined at the Governance Strategy and Resource Scrutiny Board, the creation of new children's homes can take a minimum of 12 months due to a significant number of factors and interdependencies, including property search, purchase, procurement and delivery of refurbishment work, change of use, resident engagement, Ofsted registration, workforce recruitment and training, preparing the home environment and matching and placing children and young people. So as you can see, there's a lot involved in getting these homes ready and then matching them to the right young people. Greater Manchester Regional Care Cooperative, as one of 2 national pathfinders, are delivering Project Skyline to create 24 new placements in 10 new children's homes across GM. These placements are separate to those being created by Oldham Council and will be available for all 10 local authorities in Greater Manchester to place children and young people locally close to their communities and networks. So again, it's about a broader strategy of improving the lives of those children that sadly have had to be removed from their own family homes. Thank you.
Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Mushtaq, report confirms the progress Oldham has made in improving children's services and outlines what more we need to work on. The horrific abuse suffered by Sarah Sharif highlights yet again why vulnerable children need protection. How well councillors and residents know progress is being made in achieving the strategy and improvement plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malik, for your question. This is indeed a tragic national case, and we welcome the government strengthening multi-agency safeguarding arrangements and having oversight of elective home education. The Achieving Excellence strategy and improvement plan has been shared with Ofsted, and progress will be monitored by them through focus visits as part of Ofsted's Inspecting Local Authority Children's ILACS framework. And it goes back to my earlier point in my report, where I said we're not going to be complacent despite all the good work that's going on, and we are working towards excellence. The Strategic Director of Children's Services chairs fortnightly meetings to maintain progress on delivery of actions. Quarterly progress reports are provided to the independently chaired Achieving Excellence Board and to me at my Children and Young People portfolio. Highlights will be included in my council reports. Biannual progress reports are scrutinised by the Children and Young People Scrutiny Board as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now to Education and Skills Portfolio, Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As we came to a close last year, I want to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who works tirelessly to support education, adult learning and employment across Oldham. I also want to pay tribute to our children, young people, adult and learners, and all those striving to start or advance their careers. Your efforts and achievements are truly inspiring, and I'm sure the entire Council joins me in celebrating all that you've accomplished in 2024. 2024 has been an outstanding year for our schools. To those working in our primary schools, and thank you to your dedication and hard work. We now have more good and outstanding primary schools than ever before. Attendance has improved faster here than nationally and regionally, and our inclusive approach means children stay engaged. To everyone in our secondary schools, I also pay tribute to your remarkable achievements. Over 70% of our secondary schools are now rated good or outstanding, a position Oldham hasn't enjoyed for many years. Our attendance rates continue to set the highest standard across Greater Manchester with steady improvements, and our joint efforts have been recognised by the Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel de Souza. For those working in our colleges, I extend my deepest appreciation. The support you provide to young people as they transition from school and pursue their career goals is extraordinary. I'm particularly grateful for your collaboration in making the Young People's Careers event earlier last year, such a resounding success. 2024 has also been a year of progress for our SEND partnership, which is the Special Educational Needs and Disability Partnership. Our statutory performance for issuing education, health and care plans remains amongst the strongest in the country. Additionally, the waiting list for speech and language therapy has more than halved in the past year, and access to community paediatric services has also significantly improved. However, I want to acknowledge the ongoing challenges faced by children and young people with special educational needs and the families. Despite these local advancements, I understand that the national SEND system remains complex and often difficult to navigate. I'm encouraged by the government's recent commitment to addressing those issues, including the additional £1 billion in SEND funding announced in the budget. It's also worth noting that our SEND Improvement Board Chair, Dame Christine Lenehan, has been appointed as the Government Advisor on SEND reform, a promising step towards meaningful change, and a chance that Oldham will be central in leading and influencing. Our lifelong learning continues to transform the lives of our residents. The service supported 2,264 residents into formal learning with an exceptional 99.4% pass rate delivered from 25 venues across the borough. It is important we celebrate the remarkable progress we've made together in 2024. Our collective dedication continues to shape a brighter future for our community, and I look forward to building on the success in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Lancaster, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Effective at the beginning of this month, VAT is now being levied on independent school fees. After making inquiries of my alma mater, Hume Grammar School, I have learnt that 11 families already left ahead of Christmas, citing the anticipated additional cost burden. A further 5 have served notice at Easter, 3 at the end of the academic year, and 11 being provisional, as they have not yet secured alternative school provision. In total, that is 30 families adversely affected by national government policy. When I last asked a question of the Cabinet member on this same topic, he was hardly sympathetic to my argument. However, does he have sympathy for those students whose academic and personal lives have been so severely disrupted? Also, has Oldham Council undertaken a full impact assessment? How many students does the Cabinet member expect to be displaced from the independent school sector to local state schools? Is there adequate state school provision to meet this rising demand? What contingency plans are in place in the event of nearby independent schools closing altogether? And will those students who have been forced from independent schools be provided with appropriate pastoral support? As all members can see, I have many concerns and would appreciate reassurances from the administration. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali.
Yep. Thank you to Councillor Lancaster for your question. The question you've asked me and the one that you've sort of notified me in advance is slightly different to the one that you've asked me now. So anyway, nonetheless, I'll provide a response. So Oldham Council encourages collaboration between all of the settings and schools and academies and colleges educating our children and young people. We do this through regular communications with the whole sector, hosting the independently chaired Oldham Learning Partnership and providing some universal and other traded services to these establishments. Hume Grammar School and other provisions in our borough provide a valuable option for these residents who choose to access independent education. These independent schools, obviously, I acknowledge will be operating in a more challenging environment this year. So what I will ask is encourage our officers to consider additional support to improve collaboration between schools and to maximise an opportunity for our children. So we have the Oldham Learning Board. So at the Oldham Learning Board, we don't necessarily have a representative from the independent sector. So I will ask so this to be rectified and hope that that they can contribute to the work in addressing in the current borough priorities in relation to SEND, attendance, or literacy and workforce. So thank you.
Mr Deputy Mayor, can I please raise a point of order in relation to the question text? It's very brief.
Go on, what's the...
Just to say, I meant no discourtesy to the Cabinet member. I submitted a question through Constitutional Services for the December meeting, and I then made an amendment through Constitutional Services which was approved. So the change in text was not meant as a discourtesy, so I apologise for that.
I'm sure the Cabinet member will get back to you on in more detail if needed. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There have been national challenges in speech and language development in the early years for the past decade. I welcome the reduction in waiting times for speech and language therapy, which I've recently used with my own child. Can the Cabinet member explain how this has been achieved and whether further improvements in accessing this service are planned? Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Nadeem, for your question. The waiting list for children and young people to access the speech and language therapy service has reduced from around 1,800 at summer 2023 to below 750 currently. The significant improvement has been achieved by additional investment into the NHS service by which both the Oldham Council Integrated Care Partnership and Oldham Council have funded. In addition to this, the Start for Life and Family Hubs programme has invested £390,000 in early intervention and prevention to supporting early language by funding the Early Years Better Communications team and commissioning work in schools and early year settings to build capacity within the workforce to support early language development and support early identification of need. Significant work with families has also been funded. The speech and language therapy service is now delivering clinics within our family hubs and in local schools to support easier access to specialist support and reduced missed appointments. I acknowledge that some families are still waiting too long to access this service, and we are working with colleagues in the NHS to further strengthen and develop this service.
Sorry, the time's up. Apologies for that. Moving on now, Councillor Fida Hussain, Enterprise Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think I'll, as usual, I'll move my report as printed. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Does the Council have any plans to encourage small businesses to tender for council contracts, especially those below 25,000, by joining other GM councils like Stockport and Trafford on the Star Procurement Portal, recently highlighted by GM Federation of Small Businesses? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sain. Vida. Yeah, go.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Murphy for his question. The initiative to which you refer is a pilot that is being run by Star Procurement, which I'm sure you're aware of, on behalf of its members in the Federation of Small Businesses. Unfortunately, as we are not a member of the Star Procurement, we can't access this system. However, we absolutely value our local businesses and suppliers. Where we updated our contract procedures rules, we amended them to allow more flexibility, targeting of local suppliers. And the updated CPRs go into this as much more detail, and I will be more than happy to share this specific detail in written response to you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sajid Hussain.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Could Councillor Hussain give some examples of practical outcomes for Oldham business from the GM Link programme Cisco Demo Day? And could Councillor Hussain explain further the support of the business available at the Hive?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Sajid for his question. Located on the upper floor of Spindles, the Hive is the place where businesses can access practical information, advice and guidance. It is the place where businesses network, collaborate, share ideas and do businesses with one another. The Hive also hosts a range of businesses and many events such as the Cisco Demo event, which was held in December. This is a GM-wide program that enables stand-ups and SMEs to respond to a number of challenges throughout innovative solutions. At Cisco Demo Day, hosted in Oldham at the Hive, 10 businesses showcased potential solutions, mental health care and decarbonisation of public sector buildings. As a result of this session, Cisco are attending Oldham Strategic Estates Group in the new year, so we can explore ways to make energy savings, reduce operational costs and support sustainability goals throughout these innovative and local businesses. Holding these types of regional business events is great for the reputation of our borough, and they really help to showcase the Hive as a place to collaborate, innovate and do business in a socially responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hussain, for taking this question. As a result of measures in the Chancellor's budget, employers are facing the harsh reality that it has become dramatically more expensive to hire and employ staff. Rises in employers' national insurance contributions, the minimum wage and the reduction in the discount on business rates will lead to many businesses urgently reviewing their hiring plans for this year. In December, the Office for National Statistics revealed that UK companies have started cutting jobs at the fastest rate in almost 4 years. I know that, like me, the Cabinet Member is a supporter of the Modern Apprenticeship Programme. Apprenticeships provide an amazing opportunity and a valuable route into well-paid, stable jobs and careers. I am very concerned that as companies look to rationalise their workforce plans, the first casualty will be future apprentices. Many employers, while recognising the undoubted benefits of employing apprentices, will look to pause their recruitment in the coming year to reduce employee costs. Has the Cabinet Member taken any steps to engage proactively with employers across the borough to promote the apprenticeship programme and urge businesses not to pause apprentice recruitment as a result of increased headcount costs? I, for one, would be happy to support him on a cross-party basis, and I'm sure would others, specifically I would imagine Councillor Dave Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And can I thank Councillor Arnott for his offer? And I'll gladly take that up and make sure our competent officers take that on board. In September, the government announced its intentions to reshape how the apprenticeship levy will work. Skills England is reviewing where the key skills gaps are and will work with employers to create new frameworks which will include foundations apprenticeships that will support more young people to get into good work by creating stepping stones into intermediate, advanced and higher apprenticeships. This will see the apprenticeship levy change into a new growth and skills levy, which will be more responsive and business and young people. We are committed to ensuring our young people and our business communities can access the right skill provision to grow our economy. We are continuously reviewing our approach to enhancing our offer for apprenticeships in the council and the council will ensure we are creating opportunities for residents. We are aiming to create clear talent pipeline for every service to build on successes we have seen through the Social Work Academy model, which has seen us recruit 42 social workers degree apprenticeships to provide routes into the council for young people within the borough. This will also include an expansion on our existing offer with other early career pathways such as T-levels, work experience and graduate programs. We are also focusing on how we can specifically support disadvantaged children, which mean quite a bit to me myself, on how we can specifically support these young people in the borough to achieve their potential. Positive examples of this are our involvement with the Care Leavers Summer Jobs program that has resulted in the council
I'm just conscious that we do need to move on because we've got quite a lot of business to get through yet. Yeah. So, Councillor Brownridge, Adults, Health and Wellbeing Portfolio.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think as Councillor Sykes touched on, we all know that social care is under extreme pressure at the moment as a result of increased demand and complexity. And one of the rare ways we're looking to deal with that here, and fair enough across the country, is looking at new ways of working to try and limit and decrease the actual demand. And I feel that those new way of working have become very well embedded in the council, and I would like to pay tribute to the staff who've actually enabled these changes to take place. So I'd like to highlight, as I mentioned in my report, the ARC, which has managed to help 83% of callers without the need for them to access statutory services, and that's a fantastic achievement. And I also wanted to mention social prescribing, which has been a real development in partnership with Action Together and our GP practices, and that's delivering measurable benefits to many residents whilst reducing the demand on the health service. And I'm delighted that we're able to fund this work for a further 6 years. I also want to touch on the achievements of Oldham Total Care. Despite an exciting and somewhat more difficult start to the home, which we weren't really anticipating, it's now settled with a very high level of occupancy and is providing really good quality care under its new manager. She's introduced a number of activities, of which donkeys, who visited just before Christmas, were very well welcomed by the residents. And I'd also like to place on record my thanks to Charlotte Walker, the Assistant Director, who oversaw the transition of the home's ownership and dealt with it with great efficiency. We've made good progress with the ICP board and confident that there will be significant improvements as a result of place-based working and improved partnership working. I also have some really good news about smoking in pregnancy. We all know that it's bad for both the mother and the baby and results in increased risk of miscarriage, stillbirth and sudden infant death. Our maternity services have been working hard to support parents to quit smoking, and I'm delighted to report that the number has been steadily decreasing from 16% of women smoking in pregnancy in 2013 down to 6% in the first quarter of 24-25. This is an all-time low and well below the national average, and that's a really fantastic achievement. And finally, in the light again of the pressure on the NHS, can I put in my usual plea for people to take up their vaccinations, particularly against COVID and flu, please, so that will protect your families and the NHS. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brownridge. Councillor Bashworth, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Could I ask Councillor Brownridge to explain which providers are involved in the development and support of the integrated neighbourhood teams and what this initiative will mean for the people that use these services? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bashworth. So in November, our colleagues in the NHS committed to make a step change in their work to better connect with the administration's policy of integrated working at neighbourhood level. So we've been progressing work on public service reform, and at the November meeting it was agreed that all NHS providers and healthcare providers will now place integrated working at neighbourhood level at the heart of their strategies. And the benefit for local residents is we'll be delivering place-based care that actually fits the demands of the place rather than a one-size-fits-all. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brownridge, for taking this question. Councillor Adams had previously given advance notification of this for the December meeting, but she's currently unwell at home, feeling sorry for herself and generally getting under my feet. But in September, the Cabinet member outlined the One Oldham Fund Community Grants Programme, which would launch in the autumn and award small grants of between £1,000 and £10,000 to local initiatives that aim to improve health and wellbeing outcomes and tackle health inequalities for Oldham residents. Will the Cabinet member please confirm how many applications have been received and how many grants have been awarded to date? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So the One Oldham Fund is a strategic single investment fund that uses pooled resources from a range of sources. The fund is administered by Action Together. Since its launch in October 21, the fund has distributed £1.6 million to voluntary and community organisations in Oldham. These grants have been awarded across a range of outcomes, including health and wellbeing, hate crime, children and young people, and the cost of living. The majority of grant awards are made to organisations working across the borough or across more than one district. North District has fewer applications coming in from other districts, so Action Together and the Council's district team are working with groups in that district. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? So moving on then to Councillor Goodwin, Don't Trash Oldham portfolio.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. As you can see from my report, it's...
Councillor Goodwin.
Sorry?
Yes.
Councillor Diane Williamson, you've got a question.
Have you got a question? What was the...
I'm happy to ask it, if anything. Residents who need mobility vehicles are often presented with the option of an electric vehicle, but in some areas of our borough often struggle to access adequate electric charging. What is it? It is under adults' health and wellbeing.
Okay.
What is the Cabinet member doing to ensure that electric vehicle charging infrastructure are made available in every corner of Oldham? It states under here, it's under adults' health and wellbeing. Especially with a view to supporting disabled residents. Sorry, I've missed that sentence off.
Well, Mr Deputy Mayor, I wasn't notified of this question, so I can't answer it, but I will find out the answer and I will provide it in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Brownridge. Sorry, Councillor Goodwin, back to you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. As you can see from my report, it's a continuance of excellent service provided by our teams. We were and are fully prepared for the winter season and the challenge that presents. As of today, our team have been out gritting on 34 days, covering 54 primary routes, often more than once a day. using 2,400 tonnes of salt covering 21,622 kilometres of highway. I'd like to personally thank the team for the work they do in the most difficult circumstances, and I'd also like to thank Councillor Bishop for her kind words on social media about this service. But I'd like to clarify to members and members of the public, Oldham's gritting service has never been outsourced, and there are no plans to outsource this service. The tree planting programme is well underway, along with creating green space, making Oldham a greener, cleaner borough. Also to report, as part of our gully cleansing programme, by the end of 2024, 7,760 gullies have been cleansed out of the 47,595 which will be cleansed by the end of the programme. In parks, improvements have been made in 12 parks across the borough in the last 6 months, with improvement at other parks planned over the next 6 months. If members wish to ask specifics about which parks and which projects those are, please email me outside of this meeting and I'll provide details. And finally, it is sad to see misinformation being circulated on social media. There is no shortage of capacity in Oldham cemeteries, and with proposals for expansion, this capacity will be sufficient for many years to come. And anyone saying otherwise on social media or other are trying to stoke fears within our communities. I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nasheen.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Would the Cabinet member agree with me that people who fly tip for profit or because they are lazy should be ashamed of themselves and the amount of money that they cost the council taxpayers to clean up after them? How can people make sure that the man with a van who is taking their rubbish away has a licence and will dispose of it legally? Thank you.
Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you for the question. Fly tipping is a scourge that affects the whole of the borough and can cause significant public health issues. Council teams investigate and clear thousands of tips each year as it blights Oldham's beautiful landscapes and costing hundreds of thousands of pounds. We encourage all residents to ensure that any man with a van service they use is registered with the Environment Agency and the details are checked on the agency's website. If the material is fly tipped, the resident themselves will be responsible and could be fined or prosecuted. Therefore, we encourage all to use reputable, honest and licensed waste carriers.
Thank you. Councillor Hamblett.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I do have a question on this, and it's in regards to our beloved disabled car park behind Tommyfield Pub. So could the Cabinet member please provide an update on the disabled car park and when will the car park be operating at its original capacity so that Blues badge holders can have proper access to parking without the current congestion that it's currently causing? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hamlet. The Hackney carriage bays were relocated to the new Radcliffe Street car park when the rank was lost on Danfold due to the ongoing redevelopment works in the town centre. In order to increase capacity, new disabled bays were implemented on the carriageway off New Radcliffe Street close to the integrated care centre. Work is ongoing to locate other suitable locations within the town centre to implement further blue badge bays. There are no immediate plans to make changes to the new Radcliffe Street car park. However, a review of accessible parking forms part of the car parking strategy work, and we will look to support additional capacity where possible. In the meantime, if users of car parks are having issues, we will investigate and take appropriate action. Problems can be reported at any time to the Council's parking enforcement team.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. In December, I attended an elected member local transport plan session with Transport for Greater Manchester, at which I learnt of their Vision Zero for Safer Roads, which sets the noble ambition of zero fatalities and life-changing injuries on our roads by 2040. In order to make meaningful progress against that ambition, enforcement of excessive speeds will need to be improved. Traffic calming measures alone will not suffice, and so many more permanent speed cameras must be erected and maintained. At present, however, the criteria for new speed cameras is prohibitive and nigh impossible to satisfy. Will the Cabinet member commit to raising the example of Leicestershire, where speed cameras have been introduced at locations of known community concern at the GM Casualty Reduction Partnership, and pursue any other opportunities to increase permanent speed camera coverage? I would be grateful for his support in this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lancaster, and thank you for attending the local transport plan with TFGM. I share residents' concerns about the road safety issues associated with speeding vehicles, and I'm very keen, as I know every other councillor here is, to ensure that the roads in Oldham are safe for all users. Where issues are identified, we will continue to work with our partners and residents to secure safety improvements. Greater Manchester Safety Roads Partnership is, along with the other 9 boroughs, collaborating on the new safety camera handbook. The new handbook includes revised criteria for assessing applications for safety cameras. The new criteria will give highway authorities much greater flexibility over the location of new safety camera sites and is due to go live this year to 2025. Once live, we will work closely with the partnership, residents and Greater Manchester Police to bring forward sites that require improvements, and I'll share more details in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Marlam.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. First, I would just like to say, it's not my question, but yes, thank you very much to the gritting teams. Over the last few weeks and months, they have been fantastic. However, leaf clearance on our pavements and footpaths this autumn and winter has been abysmal. Residents are reporting slips and falls, inaccessible pavements, and this is really as a result of the administration completely failing to get the basics right. The lack of leaf clearance has been a direct contributor to the recent flooding of many areas because it's been blocking the drains and the gullies. Can the Cabinet member explain why leaf clearance across Oldham has been so below standard this year and outline what steps will be taken to ensure improvements are made? Thank you.
Thank you.
I had that on. So the street cleansing team start autumn leaf clearance in September, and much of this work depends on the weather, as milder weather leads to a prolonged period of leaf fall. And I think we've had some excessive weather quite recently, which has impacted on the work the teams have been able to do. So work remains ongoing by the team, who remove over 1,300 tonnes of leaves from the borough's roads and footpaths, and in order to increase capacity and efficiency, we're looking to replace some of the sweeper vehicles, but they'll arrive in the new year. I think that answers the question.
Okay, that's the last question in that section. Yeah. So moving on to Councillor Dean, Thriving Communities and Culture Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll just make 3 points that are in my report. One is the outstanding contribution of the customer service teams in the call centre and also in the libraries in regard to the pensioners' credit initiatives that we took. Every pensioner that we felt had a claim was actually given a call, sent a letter and followed up by our great engagement team to increase actually the number of people that was in receipt of the benefit, which, as Councillor Jabbar mentioned earlier on, is around, will give each individual pensioner family 3,500 to 3,800 in benefits per year. And that's been a great initiative. Some Cabinet members, including myself, went into the call centre and saw the tremendous work that the staff were doing in contacting by phone all the people that they thought was eligible. So it was a really outstanding performance. The other thing is an initiative that we took earlier last year, which was actually bringing the sporting clubs in the borough together. We've actually repeated that, and it's really much appreciated. And the clubs, as well as the council, get enormous benefit from that. Discussions between the clubs about facilities, about how they can actually tap into grant aid and support. So it's been a really successful initiative that we are actually going to carry on, at least on a 6-monthly basis. The other item I'll mention is the Household Support Fund that over Christmas has supported so many families with vouchers, mainly the families that are on free school meals receive vouchers of £40, and it's supported them over that period of time, and I think it's been very much appreciated. Those are just a few points that I make out of the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Aftab Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Would the Cabinet member confirm what kind of activities were being provided for eligible children by the Household Support Fund over the Christmas period? And does the Cabinet member know how many eligible children were able to join in, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. In actual fact, the Household Support Fund provided approximately 19,000 children with free school meals during Christmas through the holiday voucher scheme. And the Household Support Fund also supported the expansion of the HAF programme to families above the free school meals threshold. This will provide a further 1,600 places at holiday activity provision, enabling children and young people to access enriching and fun activities over Christmas holiday period, alongside a hot nutritional meal. The programme also includes specific activities to target children and young people living in temporary accommodation.
Thank you. Councillor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just a point of personal explanation as well. Thanks to Councillor Goodwin for his recognition there. Do know that there is no need to wait for full council meetings. If you want to thank me for anything, I am very available around the building. Inbox is always open. Phone call, so no need to wait this long. Graduates from Oldham Theatre Workshop were shown around the new location for the workshop in November in the old library building, which will also house the council chambers. What does this mean for the previous plans to use a single space to house and coordinate the many arts organisations that Oldham has together? And what does it mean for the Arts Quarter concept, given that the Coliseum is now due to return to Fairbottom Street?
Well, unfortunately, I think that Councillor Bishop has got the wrong concept. There was never a plan to bring all these services together in one building. Oldham Theatre Workshop has always been promoted and always had their own premises. And of course, that's going to be really an excellent premises based within the old library building and what will be the new council chamber. Currently it's housed in the central library, Oldham Theatre Workshop. And also, we do organise things centrally through the Cultural Partnership Board, of which I am chair. We work with a range of arts and cultural organisations across the borough and are actually working with them to understand their needs, mapping out our assets across the wider estate to give more cultural organisations opportunity to access the more suitable space for the needs. The cultural programme is a key part of our town centre regeneration programme with heritage arts, cultural focus, and still very much with the part of the town centre. And also, of course, what we're going to see this year is a large new event space being provided in Spindles. Also provided in Spindles will be the local interest centre, and obviously we're trying to open Spindles out as well as a place where we can actually exhibit a lot of the particular stuff that we do have. We have an enormous amount of artefacts and materials that really should be displayed, and we're going to do that within the Spindles setting. So those are the sorts of things that we're going to get. We'd really welcome as well the programme for Oldham Coliseum that's going back to its original setting, and as announced by Councillor Shah earlier on, the contractors are now in a position to get started to make sure that that's open within this year, and it'll be open certainly for the pantomime season. So those are the sorts of things that we're actually providing, but all these particular activities have always been intended to be discreet to that organisation that actually provides them.
Thank you. And Councillor Charters.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Has the Council received any information about plans to introduce the new right to buy for community assets outlined in the King's Speech in July? which will make it easier for people to purchase empty heritage assets and convert them into cultural venues, with the government providing seed funding to help them do it. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Charters. Have you outlined the UK government is advancing plans to introduce the right to buy for community assets as part of its legislative agenda, highlighted in the King's Speech. The initiative aims to empower communities to purchase and revitalise valued but underused or empty heritage assets, such as pubs, shops and cultural venues, converting them into community beneficial spaces like art centres and music venues. The policy, expected to be part of the English Devolution Bill, reflects a commitment to community-driven regeneration and economic participation. It is expected to support these efforts. The government will provide seed funding to assist communities in acquiring and developing these assets.
Thank you. That's time finished for that section of the agenda. Moving on to item 10, notice of administration business, for which we have 30 minutes. Motion 1, get Britain working. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Mohan Ali to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. As a Labour politician, the rights and well-being of working people is a golden thread that runs through my politics. My party was founded to represent the working class, to champion them and to fight for the opportunities for them, and that's what this government is doing. I'm really proud to stand here and say that the Prime Minister himself has appointed a cabinet where every single member of that cabinet comes from a working class background, and in just 7 months the government has displayed its commitment to working people, first with the Employment Rights Bill and now with the Get Britain Working White Paper. Giving people the opportunity to secure rewarding and fulfilling employment is a goal that everybody in this chamber should support. It's about making sure that people have dignity, about ensuring people can have pride in their jobs, and it's about making sure that people who can work are able to do so and that they are supported in their workplace. What's clear to me is that for the last decade or so, the job centre hasn't been helping people get into work in the way that it should have done. And that's no fault of the staff that work there. They're doing as they've been instructed. But we do need to see major reform, and we need to make sure the system tailors its approach to the specific circumstances of each individual so that we can provide more effective and meaningful assistance to them. And we have experience here in Greater Manchester of this approach working for our residents. So take Christine's story as an example of that. Christine is a 60-year-old woman from Oldham. She'd been unemployed for 14 months due to traumatic experiences that made it difficult for her to trust people. She had a deep-seated fear of filling in application forms because her personal information had been leaked in the past. Christine had served in the military in the 1980s, unfortunately when it was illegal for gay people to serve in our military. Christine, is a lesbian. With the information that she provided, that information was outed. Sadly, she was arrested and faced incredibly intrusive personal questions because of it. Since then, she was understandably anxious about her personal information getting into the wrong hands. Through Greater Manchester's Working Well Support to Succeed programme, Christine received support that viewed her as a person and that addressed her specific needs. And then with the help of her advisor, she was able to rebuild her confidence and find employment, significantly improving her quality of life. Now, because the Working Well programme looked at Christine as a person and didn't just view her as a number, her advisor was able to identify that Christine wanted to work outdoors, so she started volunteering at the Growing Hub at Alexandra Park in Oldham. After a successful period as a volunteer, Christine was offered, and I'm thrilled to say she accepted, a position as a growing assistant at that hub. By providing personalised support and addressing individual barriers, we can help our residents overcome challenges and achieve their goals. And these successes, Mr Deputy Mayor, they not only improve the lives of the individuals involved, but they also contribute to the overall well-being of all of our communities. The successes of Get Oldham Working, outlined in the text of the original motion in front of us tonight, speaks for itself. What started out as a target of creating 2,015 jobs by 2015 has by far surpassed that and more. How much better would the system be if it was like the Working Well programme or Get Oldham Working? November's white paper was a huge step in the right direction for the future of employment support, coupled with the announcement of more funding for the Trailblazer scheme in Greater Manchester. I'm genuinely convinced that with them we have partners who understand our experiences and that they're keen to build on them. These reforms are massively welcome. Oldham stands ready to help the government to get Great Britain working again. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I second this motion. The Get Britain Working White Paper is the biggest reforms to employment support for a generation as set out by the Labour government. And it is imperative that we as a borough maximise the benefit offered from the government investment in supporting our residents. This motion sets out some of the things we need to do locally to realise some of the benefits as outlined by the leader. Here in Oldham, through the council's Get Up the Oldham working team and lifelong services, we have supported many residents with upskilling and into employment as detailed within the written motion. However, the government investment that we are now going to see is going to be significant. The level of support offered in the Get Britain Working White Paper for our young people and the economically inactive due to health issues is something we have never seen previously. So this radical change proposal of cross-government working with support from the NHS to unleash the potential of all our residents here in Oldham. We all know someone struggling with a health condition or poor mental health that makes working difficult. For individuals, it is a personal loss affecting their financial independence and purpose and a loss to the economy. Nationally, there are millions of people that have been left unemployed and trapped in an inactivity spiral. So the investment of £240 million by the government, which Oldham will see its share, is a massive welcome, which will tackle the root cause of unemployment and inactivity, joining up health, skills and employment support based on local communities' unique needs. It comes, as figures show, the UK is the only major economy that has seen a drop in its employment rate over the last 5 years, with more than 9 million people economically inactive and a record 2.8 million people out of work because of long-term sickness. The proposals put forward by the government will see tackling long-term sickness by combating the rising numbers of people unable to work because of ill health. The government plans to fix the NHS by increasing staff numbers to reduce waiting lists in the 20 trusts across England with the highest rates of economic inactivity. It will see the recruitment of 8,500 mental health professionals. To support young people under its new youth guarantee, the government pledges to provide all 18 to 21-year-olds in England with access to an apprenticeship training, education, or help finding a job. Economic inactivity is an urgent challenge for the UK economy, so the government focus on groups and regions of the country to join up support and help more people into work. So here in Oldham, we need to be in a position to harness the opportunities of the government investment, and we will do this by organising a Get Britain Working Summit to involve partners and have a plan in place for Oldham. With the investment from government and through our established Get Oldham working team, we will look to see how best we can enhance our local offer. Also, our young people are our future, and we will need to have plans in place so that our young people can make the most of the youth guarantee. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Two members have so far indicated they'd like to speak on this. Councillor Harkness.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So I rise to support this motion. We do all want to upskill people. I welcome the proposals to expand mental health support. Access to mental health support, like many health services, there is a big problem with that in terms of huge waiting lists. I think it is important that I make reference to the hard work that, say, Councillor Jabbar's done locally on this sort of thing and the positive rhetoric that he's put forward in the past. You know, I think obviously the work that this motion does, that I think, that the intentions locally are very positive. I do want to make note of some of the rhetoric from some members of the government and the former Prime Minister, Labour Prime Minister, where there's sometimes a little bit of a witch hunt and a blame culture on some people who are unwell. And I think we need to ensure that we have positive reinforcement because that's much more effective in changing behaviours than punitive measures where we have realistic targets over sanctions. People who are ill, either physical or mental, or have mental illnesses should receive support. It shouldn't just be about cost cutting, though, which I think sometimes some members of the government have been suggesting that's what it's all about. It isn't. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about upskilling people and ensuring people have those opportunities to work. And I think, obviously the rises in national insurance likely to increase unemployment. So I think that support mechanism is going to be key as things go forward. So I do support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sajid, the same.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The motion before us tonight is very important and timely. Whilst the cost of living crisis continues for thousands of residents in Medlock Vale and across Oldham, no one can argue that getting people into work, into decent, well-paying jobs is important. It's important for residents' mental and physical well-being and for our local economy too. One of the really important goals of the White Paper and the new approach taken by the government is about making sure that people that can work and want to work are supported into jobs that meet their needs and provide them the dignity they deserve in the workplace. The story the leader told this evening about Christina, how she was supported to overcome her mental health struggle to get into a job she loves, is inspiring, and we need more of this. We need closer working between employment and health, like we've seen with the Working Well partnership in Greater Manchester, and get Oldham working. We need to make sure people with physical and or mental health conditions are supported to maintain work and secure an alternative job. The success of this will not only protect residents and their families' livelihoods, but also increase chance of quality of life, decrease the pressure on the mainstream services who are already struggling with capacity such as GPs, talking therapies and musculoskeletal support. We need to get cracking. We need to come together as a whole system with our key partners in public, private and voluntary community faith and social enterprise sector to figure out how we can maximise the opportunities the government's new approach brings for our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Shah, you wish to reply?
Yeah, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to thank members for their positive contributions today. And I do agree with Councillor Harkness, and I think the way that we sometimes make reference to people who rely on state benefits, actually them benefits are there for them. There's no shame in that, but there's shame on us as a society who demonise those people, who call them out, and some of the rhetoric is unhelpful. And more than that, it's like disgusting. It shouldn't be that at all. So I absolutely concur with the comments Councillor Harkness has made. But more importantly as well in this debate, we have to make sure that those that abuse those systems are, dealt with appropriately, because that's also taken away from those that need it the most. But fixing our economy and getting Oldhams into decent, well-paying jobs is massively important to all of us. This motion sets us on the path to exploring how we can get the very best deal for Oldhamers by bringing together the public, the private sector, the third sector, and employers to create more opportunities for our people. For far too long, the system has been broken, and it's left leaving people with a sense of hopelessness, and most importantly, worthlessness and despair. But those days are over. Many people in Oldham have experienced something special, and those experiences can be amplified and accelerated, giving many more people hope, dignity, and most of all, the pride and the respect that they deserve. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Does the Council agree the motion? Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? The motion is carried. And moving on to item 2 now. Motion 2, sorry. The B network. I call on Councillor Charters to move and Councillor Rustage to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'm moving the motion today regarding the upcoming B network review in Oldham, which presents us with a golden opportunity to reshape and revitalise our local bus services. We've already witnessed the transformative potential of this model in some parts of Greater Manchester, in Bolton and Wigan, where new services have been introduced to meet local needs, including an all-night bus service that goes from Royal Bolton Hospital to help with people commuting to and from work at unsociable hours. This serves as a powerful example of what can be achieved when transport services are integrated, responsive and tailored to the demands of the community rather than profit. The Mayor of Greater Manchester has made a commitment to extend the £2 bus fare until the end of this year, subject to a mid-year review to ensure this is still a financially viable option. This underscores the B Network's ambition to replicate a London-style successful low-fare, high-patronage model which offers significant relief to countless people relying on affordable and dependable public transport. The publicly owned models has also given us more power than in the previous deregulated system, as we've seen with the launch of the annual bus pass scheme operated through our credit unions across Greater Manchester, cutting the weekly cost of bus travel by £5 and addressing real concerns among residents who rely on public transport to commute. This is also now being looked at further, where we are looking to integrate our annual bus passes into annual bus and tram passes so that residents can go wherever they need to in Greater Manchester, on whatever form of transport they can, at a reduced cost. The B Network has been a success for this town and for the wider conurbation. Buses are more punctual than they were under the privatised model, with ongoing work being carried out to improve this further, including priority for late-running buses at traffic signals. Patronage is steadily increasing, our bus fleet is improving, and fares are simpler. And now we, as elected members, have much more influence over the network, allowing us to ensure that buses are working for people, not profit. I would encourage all members of the council to engage proactively with the network review, and I know that some have, and some have already been in touch with me about buses in their area across the chamber. And please send any related issues to either myself or to the officers for the bus or Metrolink. We can get these issues raised and addressed in a timely manner. I'll wrap up by saying that since I was a teenager travelling to Oldham on the bus for college and then to Manchester for university, most of the time I was stood there in the rain, waiting at a bus stop, going, Jesus, why aren't the buses just working? So all I've ever wanted was a nice functioning bus network, and this is now becoming a reality here in Greater Manchester, thanks to these people who've worked so hard to bring the buses back under public control. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rustich, your second.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I rise to second this motion, and I hope that all councillors across the chamber can join me in supporting this motion about our B network. I am delighted that the number 76 bus, which runs through Failsworth, will be joining the B network at long last, as part of the final tranche of services that are franchised. The 76 vital bus route connecting communities between Manchester and Oldham, which otherwise would be siloed from each other, the divide of the M60 bridged by a bus service that doesn't stick to the main roads but goes through Limeside before crossing into Failsworth and ensuring that children can get to school. That people working in Oldham or Manchester don't have to walk over to Oldham Road on what can be a very treacherous journey when it's cold and wet. I am sure many other councillors do, and I remember how our buses ran prior to deregulation in the 1980s. Indeed, I had my late cousin used to work in the operating theatre in Oldham Hospital. When they were privatised, the bus, as Joss has alluded to, that went on social hours, that was stopped. But once you had deregulation, the driving factor of a bus route, how it served its passengers, but not how much money it made for the bus company's shareholders. Having seen vital bus routes axed by private companies for not making enough money, isolating communities, I am delighted that we have ended this failed experiment of privately run public transport, and we've returned to a service where buses are run for people and not for profit. I'm already speaking to residents in my ward about what changes we can make to our services to ensure that the B network is even better for them. And I would encourage every councillor to do the same and to feed in to this review when it opens in the new year. Thank you.
I've one indication of one member wishing to speak. If any other members wish to speak, please indicate. Councillor Hamblett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I rise to speak on this issue. I, as a bus user, one of few in this chamber, I know there's a couple of others, at first I wish to mourn and pay tribute to Stocks buses who have serviced Oldham and other surrounding towns for 50 plus years as a family-run business, yet were never given an option to join this new venture. Not sure why, but I'm sure the Deputy Cabinet Member will explain later on. However, I'm sure many of us would welcome the decision to keep the bus fare at £2 per journey. But for how long this will last, well, Mr. Burnham will have to tell us to keep it against the national trend. Also, many of our bus routes are still not 100%, and some of them doesn't make sense in some cases. And I hope that this will certainly be looked up during the network review, especially when we get round to finally looking at some of our bus routes and trying to chop and change them. And one of the things that definitely hits in my, well, gets my bit, and I'm sure Councillor Bashforth will agree, at our recent Oldham Learning Disability and Autism Collaborative meeting, I did raise with Councillor Bashforth that those who have hidden disability, SEND and autism application forms, this is your application form on your website. Very, very complex, Councillor Charters, very complex. So for those people who have to apply for the said form, to try to understand that is difficult enough to go through the loops and hurdles, and in some cases it's even contradictory to revert them back to different sections. So I hope that yourself, as our representative, take it back to B Committee and to try to get to grips with this if we want to get people from this borough who want to live and work and to travel and to use our networks properly to get to grips with that. So I do welcome this, I do support it, but I do hope we can get the very, very basics right, and particularly our networks and our routes. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I now had no other indications of people wishing to speak? So, Councillor Charters, do you wish to reply?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It's my understanding that operators were invited to tender for these smaller routes, including routes such as the 343 and the 356, the Saddleworth Rambler. And unfortunately, the previous provider was not successful, and it's now being run by Diamond Buses. I, like many people, would have preferred that they stayed in Oldham, and they weren't being run from Eccles by different drivers, but I'm not in charge of the procurement process, and that's probably a good thing that councillors aren't in charge of that, and it's done independently. With regards to Councillor Hamblett's point about the form, more than happy to look into that. If you can drop me an email, just so, one, I remember, and two, I can have a look at the form myself, but I'm more than happy to take that forward to B Network Committee, as I'm sure the other Oldham councillor in the room will probably raise it if I forget. But yeah, again, I'm just willing to say that I'm happy to speak to anyone who wants to talk about buses, bus routes, changes in their ward, moving a bus stop, getting a new service, changing some times. I'm also willing to go and speak to town councils, parish councils, anyone who wants to help get involved with this. The more people involved, the better, and the more that residents have ownership over their bus services, the more likely they are to use them. And I quite enjoy using the bus because it means I don't have to try and look for parking, especially when I'm going down into Manchester for B Network Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does Council agree the motion? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 11, notice of opposition business. 30 minutes for this section. And as I said previously, Lib Democrat motion 10 minutes, Oldham Group motion 10 minutes, and the Independent motion 10 minutes. first motion is social care funding crisis, national insurance contributions. I call on Councillor Alamdani to move and Councillor Amblett to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I rise to propose the motion. We've already had reference earlier in the meeting to the difficulties around funding for social care. Undoubtedly, this will be raised again at the budget meeting, and again, I will say, as I've said at every budget meeting I've participated in so far, that until we actually fix social care funding, the whole budget process is a farce, because councils can't carry on running the way that they are. They can't be expected to create any kind of reasonable budget without proper funding for social care. But the particular focus of this motion is on the national insurance changes that are coming and the impact that's going to have on a whole range of businesses, small businesses in particular, which have already been suffering from rising energy prices, high interest rates, rising costs. And small businesses, I think everyone would agree, the lifeblood of the British economy. They have been just such a centrepiece, such a spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation. And a large number of those small businesses are community pharmacies, they are hospices, they are GP practices, all of whom are going to be impacted by this tax rise. And we are particularly concerned about the impact of these rises, these tax rises, on the health and social care sector, what it means for social care providers, what it means for the families depending on those social care providers, and what it means for the councils, like this council, who have to find the funding for many of them. If you look at care companies, they frequently allocate more than 70% of their revenue to staff wages. Now, we have increases to the national living wage, which have been driven by inflation, but those added on to that increase in national insurance costs means that next year it will be impossible for those companies to pay the rent, to pay for staff improvement, to pay for training when they're facing those additional costs. It's going to make the staffing crisis in social care that everybody in this chamber agrees is traumatising that industry and traumatising the people dependent on that industry. It's going to make it worse. And that is the opposite of what the government says that it wants. And I do believe that's honest, that they say that's, they want to improve this social care sector. This is not doing that. If we look at GP practices, they're a legal partnership. They can't increase their prices. They can't change the number of appointments they give. They can't drive up activity. They can't do more than they're already doing. But they have got no exemption. They're going to have to bear the brunt of this price increase, and that is going to be taken out on what can be delivered across this sector. Now, that means reductions in clinical staffing. That means increased waiting times. It means impacted patient care. And again, that's the opposite of what the government says that it wants. I don't think that they intended to do what they're doing. But that is what they've achieved for pharmacies, for hospices, for dental practices, for many other organisations. And the impact on our constituents. We need to stand up to say that this is going to harm them. And that's why we brought forward this motion, and that's why I think everybody should support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamblett.
Thank you once again, Mr Deputy Mayor. So I rise to second this amendment in its original form and support the words of my colleague. So the NI rise will deeply hurt those who work on the front lines of our services, as we've already heard, and helping those who need it. So for two examples, a local charity who help support adults with learning disabilities and autism are facing an NI bill of £10,120.68 per annum. It's a massive rise for them, and they're a charity as well as a support company as well. And our own in-house care company, very recently, as we found out, MyoCare, will also be having to foot the bill, which I think we will have to foot the bill, of £630,000 per annum. So it's just two examples of how awkward this NI rise from the recent budget has been. In fact, the National Care Forum, and I will quote directly for them, recently provided the following update. In terms of the national insurance increase, the statement sticks to the Treasury's line that the money has already been made available for adult social care in budget, and that those directly employed by the public sector will be covered by the government, with more details coming in December. Well, we've had that from the provisional settlement. This would suggest that the Treasury is holding to its line that adult social care providers, as private providers, will not be supported to cover employers' NIC rises. So after I've read this, and you hear what pain could be on the horizon and potential losses on the front lines, I don't get how this case is in the amendment to which the said mover wants to first alter our motion to near pointlessness, and then, at the end of it, it's subsequently write a letter to themselves. I'd love to see how that plays out. Would you like to receive your letter and then open it yourself in excitement? I don't know how that would play out, but anyway. In any case, I support this motion in its original unamended form and urge others to do the same, because, as we've heard, the NI rises will affect those who provide, those who need it most. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, we do have an amendment to this motion, so I call upon Councillor Bramridge to move and Councillor Mushtaq to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So in rising to propose the amendment, I want to make it clear that I don't disagree with the underlying point of the original motion, namely that the increase in national health contributions has the potential to increase financial pressure on social care and public health. The purpose of the amendment is to increase clarification of the actions the Council will take and to slightly change the way we discuss the issue with the Government, as it's our view we have a greater chance of meaningful dialogue if we produce a well-argued evidence-based case rather than making demands. The issue of GP appointments is not a matter for the Council, and I think making a direct link between the possible increased cost and the number of theoretical appointments that this would fund is overly simplistic. Nevertheless, the issue of access to GPs is of justifiable concern to our residents, so we're proposing that myself and the Deputy Chief Executive investigate the potential impact of the changes on GP services. Social care is inevitably a staff-heavy operation, so the changes will have financial implications for care providers and consequently for the Council as funders of that care. The amendment therefore makes it clear that the financial impact will be fully explained to the providers as part of the rates modelling process. The information gathered will enable us to contact the Government with facts and an assessment of the implications for the early intervention and prevention agenda, the importance of which all parties now recognise as an essential to dealing with the pressures on social care. So I would ask everybody to support the amendment. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. We are getting short of time here, so Councillor Mushtaq.
Yeah, I'm happy to formally second the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. We won't have any time for anybody to speak, so does Councillor Amandani wish to reply?
I'll keep it brief. Thank you for the explanation, Councillor Brownridge. A well-argued argument. I don't totally agree with it, but the point of coming back with more information, I accept is a reasonable one. I think taking out the paragraph, as simplistic as it is, that highlights the impact that these kind of cuts have, I do disagree with, and I would rather it had been, had we had the opportunity to combine both approaches, demanding things and providing more information. Given that it doesn't have that combination, I don't think I could support it, but you put your case well. Thank you.
Councillor Brownridge, you wish to respond?
Well, only to say thank you for those kind words. I much appreciate it. It's horrible. We're having a really civilised debate today. I feel quite weak. And I feel quite weak. So, thank you, and I have no further comments to make. Thank you.
We will vote on the amendment now. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? That is carried. Right, could we... those in favour? The amended motion, sorry. Amended motion. No. That's just of the amendment at the moment.
Just the amendment.
Just the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment at the moment? Just having a count, sorry. Okay. Those against? Councillor Alamdani, do you wish to reply to your... Oh, sorry, no. Yeah, you've got the amendment. Yeah, the vote on the amended motion now. Those in favour?
Oh.
Of the amended motion?
Substantive motion as amended.
The substantive motion as amended, yeah. Yeah. Carried. Do you want those against? No, you don't. No. Thank you. Moving on to motion 2, ethical investment divestment from fossil fuels and arms by the Greater Manchester Pensions Fund. I call on Councillor Cowser to move and Councillor Montaz Ali Azad to second the motion.
That's a great start. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Madam Leader and fellow councillors. We often talk about leadership in this chamber, not just in words, but in the actions we take and the principles we uphold. This motion today is a chance for Oldham Council to lead by example and align our financial decisions with the values we champion, such as sustainability, fairness and responsibility. In 2019, this council declared a climate emergency and set a bold target to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2038. Yet, through the Greater Manchester Pension Fund, public money is still invested in fossil fuel companies like Shell and BP. Industries that are not only driving the climate crisis, but are also becoming increasingly risky investments as the world moves towards renewable energy. At the same time, GMPF holds over £241 million in arms companies, supplying weapons to regimes implicated in human rights abuses, including in Palestine and Yemen. These investments by GMPF connect us, however, indirectly to violence and suffering. There is also a moral dimension we cannot ignore. Arrest warrants for figures like Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes remind us of the urgent need to ensure that public investments are not complicit in violations of international law or human rights. By divesting from fossil fuels and arms, we are taking a stand for ethical leadership and showing that public funds can and must serve the public good. After all, public money should be a force for good, not a source of harm. This motion calls for action. We are asking GMPF to develop a clear plan to divest from fossil fuels and arms within the next 12 months. It's time for them to align their investments with Greater Manchester's 2038 net zero target, rather than their current 2050 goal, and to report transparency on their progress. Divestment is only one part of the solution. We must also encourage GMPF to reinvest in industries that align with Oldham's values, such as renewable energy, social housing and sustainable infrastructure. Industries that will bring stronger, greener communities and create opportunities for the future. This is not just about Oldham. Across the UK, councils are taking similar steps. Manchester City Council recently passed a motion calling for divestment, joining others like Liverpool and Waltham Forest. By supporting this motion, we can strengthen the growing call for ethical investment across GM. Fellow members, this is a chance to lead with integrity and to show that public funding can and must align with public good. By supporting this motion, we take a stand for climate action, ethical governance and a better future for our residents. Let us take this step together. Thank you.
Councillor Montaz Ali Azad to second the motion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, colleagues, I rise to second this important motion. I might not speak with many words, but I speak with my heart. This motion is about fairness, justice, and doing what is right for our people and our planet. As a councillor, we have a duty to stand for what is ethical. The Greater Manchester Pension Fund invests millions in fossil fuels and arms companies. Those investments hurt people in Palestine, in Yemen, and around the world. They also harm our environment, making life harder for future generations, including here in Oldham. I believe we must take action. Manchester City Council has already shown the way. If they can support divestment, why can't Oldham? I hope all councillors will support this motion today. It is not about politics. It is about people, our value, and our responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we have an amendment to this motion. I call upon Councillor Mushtaq to move and Councillor Jabbar to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd like to thank the Oldham Group for bringing this important motion. I think the majority of the Chamber agree that we all have a responsibility towards the climate emergency, and I'd like to think the whole Chamber is against the killing of innocent men, women and children using state-of-the-art weapons of war. Divestment from fossil fuel companies and those contributing directly or indirectly to death and destruction via the arms industry is a progressive step for a forward-thinking, progressive region like Greater Manchester. That's why the motion asks that we support divestment this evening and encourage councils across Greater Manchester to follow suit. The role of fossil fuels in the climate emergency is well rehearsed. What isn't as well rehearsed is the impact of bombs, bullets, artillery, drones, tanks and other sophisticated weaponry. The mass killings, destruction of health, education, transport and essential utilities such as food and fuel is all too evident in conflict zones. The brazen and dismissive attitude of regimes and individuals across the world, at times towards their own people they occupy, and at times their neighbours, is all too evident in the 21st century. We live in a world where injustice and slaughter are condemned only if it is in keeping with international relations or wider strategic aims, not because it's the right thing to do. The gravest of injustices, Mr Mayor, is referenced in the motion, that being perpetrated in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon and surrounding countries by Israel. Hence, the arrest warrants being issued against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Israeli Defence Minister Yoav Gallant and Hamas military commander Mohammed Daif for his role in the terrorist attacks of October 2023. The motion refers to the environmental devastation, destruction of habitats and carbon-intensive recovery processes following the deployment of munitions in any war. Whilst this is true for any conflict, what it masks is the proactive strategy of Israel to target the agriculture and food production in Palestine. By July 2024, satellite images show 60% of Gaza's farmland, crucial for feeding the war-ravaged territory's hungry population, has been damaged or destroyed by Israeli attacks. In Beit Lahia, Israeli bulldozers and heavy machinery have systematically razed fields, reducing them to dirt. Open fields, Mr Deputy Mayor, no terrorists, no buildings and no excuses. Satellite images of the southern Gaza city of Zaytun, Deir al-Bala, Khan Yunis's orchards and farmlands, of Rafah and many more areas show the wanton destruction of farmland, crops and a strategic aim of disabling Palestine from feeding its people. Bombing them to oblivion isn't enough for this far-right Israeli government. They are creating conditions in Gaza and the West Bank that make it inhabitable for those to whom that land belongs. They are taking away their homes, their ability to feed themselves, their right to live peacefully, their right to raise a family, to be happy and simply to be. Mr Mayor, highlighting the plight of the Palestinians as a specific example within the broader point of the motion is needed, because it is the greatest injustice of our time. And this evening, we have the opportunity to show that we do not accept what's happening to the innocent people of Gaza and the wider region. That's why I'm asking all members to support the amendment as a collective show of solidarity to all those affected by climate change and wars across the world. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Jabbar, we are very limited on time, but seconding the motion.
Well, I'll be very brief, Mr Deputy Mayor. So firstly, thank you to Oldham Group for bringing this important topic here tonight. I do agree that climate change and ethical investment is really important. I sit on the Greater Manchester Pension Board, and I can tell you every meeting we do discuss this. And I think today's motion will make sure that we continue to do that and we transit to a faster decarbonisation of the activities that the Greater Manchester Pension Fund does. I think also, Mr Mayor, it's nice to see peace is breaking out in the Middle East, and I want to welcome what's happening in the ceasefire. I think, you know, freeing of the hostages is really important, but also more important is the damage that's been done to the Palestinian homes and the Palestinian land. And I really hope that this ceasefire marks a new beginning of peace for both nations in there. And I think we should do everything we can to rebuild the Palestinian lives, the Palestinian homes that's been damaged as a result of this long war. Once again, you know, both of the speakers from the Oldham Group very eloquently get the message across these two issues around climate change and ethical investment. So I'm happy to second it, but can I ask for a recorded vote, please, on this? Thank you.
Very quickly, Councillor, we're actually out of time now. What do you quickly? Do you want to reply?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Councillor Mushtaq and Councillor Jabbar for the amendment. For once we are on the same page, your amendments and points are accepted and noted. Thank you.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Thank you. And recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote, and this is on the amendment.
We need to recorded vote. We need numbers, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Move to the recorded vote now for the amendment.
Councillor Akhtar. Councillor Al-Hamdani. Councillor Ali Mohan. Councillor Ali Zahir. Councillor Arnott. Councillor Aslam. Councillor Azad. Councillor Ball. Councillor Bashworth. Councillor Bishop. Councillor Brownridge. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Charters. Councillor Chauhan. Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Davis. Councillor Dean. Councillor Gaffour. Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Hamlet. Councillor Harkness. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Hince. Councillor Hindle. Councillor Hoban. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hurley. Councillor Hussain Aftab. Councillor Hussain Fidab. Councillor Hussain Junaid. Councillor Hussain Sajid. Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Islam. Councillor Jabbar. Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Cowser. Councillor Lancaster. Councillor Malik. Councillor Marland. Councillor McLaren. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Nasheen. Councillor Navesey. Councillor Quigg. Councillor Rustich. Councillor Shah. Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Sykes. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wahid. Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Woodvine.
Against.
And Councillor Moores.
The amendment is carried. Now move to the vote on the motion as amended. Are we just having the hands up for that? Yeah. Yeah. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The motion as amended is carried. Thank you. And we now move on to motion 3, the Old Failsworth Library. I call on Councillor Ball to move and Councillor Wilkinson to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'm presenting this motion tonight to support the manager and staff of Jelly Babies Nursery, which is a registered charity, who have either been ignored or kept in the dark about the future of the old library, where they rent half the building. This expires in May 2026. They have the worry of not only the current state of disrepair and neglect by their landlord, Oldham Council, but whether they would still have a job to come to in the future. Myself and the people of Failsworth I have spoken to about the building have always been under the impression that it was gifted to the town by the Sidlow family, whose heritage dates back to the 1840s. After some research at the new library, as opposed to the old, the Sidlow family did indeed pay £25,000 in the 1960s to the council to build a library, which was named after and opened by Robert Sidlow on the 28th of July 1962. After checks with Oldham's Charitable Trust solicitor to see if it was a charitable asset, which it isn't, it has no covenants on the title relating to the use of it. It was confirmed the council had bought land from 2 properties on Pole Lane in order to build a library. So this beggars the question why Oldham Council have not done their due diligence as a landlord and maintained the property adequately over the last 14 years, and why they have not realised the full potential of the building for our community in Failsworth. Late repairs cost more in the end, and empty buildings are lost revenue, as in the case of the other half of this building that Jelly Babies Nursery do not rent. The building is right in the middle of our conservation area, so you would think that that alone would be a reason for Oldham Council to maintain it to its once proud state. I have photos taken almost 12 months apart of the frontage where panels and sheeting have fallen off, exposing bare brickwork that could potentially allow water in. There are even the remains of a thick tree trunk that had been growing out of this part of the brickwork. No attempt at repair has been made on the front for years. I must note that on the 26th of April last year, a photographer was seen on CCTV taking multiple photos outside the building. The manager said he looked like he was from the council. That was nearly 10 months ago. Why? Was this to see how much it would cost to renovate? Why haven't the nursery been told who he was and what became of his photos? The nursery have never failed to pay their £1,000 a month rent, which amounts to £168,000 over the 14 years they've been in situ. And they have paid out hundreds of pounds of their own money for internal repairs. The offer of an alternative placement has been explored, but as both properties need money spending on them, the manager has stated that their preferred option is to stay in the present property. If the nursery has to move out, then my question to council is what will become of this building, which has been and still could be a great asset for our local community going forward. Please don't let it rot away anymore. Step up and help the people of Failsworth have something to pass on to future generations, as our area always seems to be the last in line for any spare money, which is what we're told all the time. Thank you.
A question. I'm looking at the time, I'm sure you all are. It's coming up to 9:30. Are we happy to extend to 10 o'clock? Is that those in favour? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Call on Councillor Wilkinson to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I second this motion and challenge the amendment. The amendments made by the Failsworth Independent Party.
Excuse me, we're speaking to the motion at the moment, not to the amendment.
So I'll wait until the amendment's been made and then I'll do that. I'll just second the motion.
Right, we have an amendment, as been mentioned, and Councillor Hindle to move and Councillor Hoban to second. Councillor Hindle.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Whilst I broadly agree with the original motion, I'll move this amendment just to tidy up some of the resolutions / recommendations. I understand that the tenant is already in discussions with the estate department regarding a possible relocation to a newer and better facility. I also think it's right that Failsworth Council are kept informed on the state of the building. At present, we have Failsworth Town Hall for the community groups to use, and this is underused. I suggest to the other Failsworth councillors that we work together on the future of the former library. I'm more than happy as a district lead to take this matter forward. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Hoban to second.
Second, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak now, Deputy Mayor?
Does any member wish to speak? And it's over to you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I second this motion and challenge the amendment. The amendments made by the Failsworth Independent Party, also known as FIP, and more recently known as FLIP, the Failsworth Labour Independent Party, is nothing more than a rehash of the wording of this original motion.
Can we speak to the motion and not about... the amendment. Speak to the amendment and not about individuals or part.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's nothing more than a rehash of the wording of the original motion. To me, this is an attempt to justify their existence in what is essentially a Failsworth East matter. This building is a matter of importance for Failsworth, and despite emails being sent to Angela Rayner and Jim McMahon asking for assistance, unfortunately, it's fell on deaf ears. The lease for this building expires in 16 months, and this fine facility will be lost. Jelly Babies, who currently occupy half of the building, pay £1,000 a month, and have done for the last 14 years. If the other half of the building had been used, the council could have recouped £168,000, but they failed to do this. Council intervention is required as soon as possible.
Does Councillor Ball wish to reply?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks, Councillor Hindle. We will work together, hopefully. I've already spoken as well to Councillor Rustage, who's been 100% behind this project. Again, as Councillor Wilkinson's just said, some of the wording that you've changed, I mean, I mentioned to the manager that they changed the word old to former. Everybody says the old library, as Councillor Shah said in other business today. One thing I'd like to point out is that you've used the word potentially renovate 3 times in the amendment, and then you suddenly change your mind and say explore opportunities to renovate. So you're contradicting yourself. But hopefully everybody in Failsworth will be behind a renovation of this building to keep it going. And hopefully we'll all work together. Thank you.
Does Councillor Hindle wish to reply?
Yes, Mr Deputy Mayor. As I said previously, I'm happy to take this matter forward as District Lead. Thank you.
Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. The amendment is carried. Now move on to the motion as amended. Those in favour? Those against? The motion as amended is carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 12, Treasury Management Half-Yearly Review Report 2024-25. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Shah to second the recommendations in the report.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council approve the recommendations? Thank you. Item 13, updates and actions from the Council. On page 171, I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Taylor to second the report.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I just want to once again refer to the motion which I submitted in December 2023, I think, which is around St John's Ambulance, and the fact that the other Chief Executive Officer didn't forward on the correspondence that he sent to the Prime Minister at the time, so I never had a copy of that as the proposer of the motion, and I still don't think it's been sent to the new Prime Minister or the new government. So it would just be good if we could make some action on that motion. And there was a lot of work, or I was hoping to work with the leader of the council around some of the local volunteer groups in Oldham that do St John's Ambulance works, which I also don't think have been progressed, so it would be good if we could revisit that. Thank you.
Councillor Shah.
Happy to look into that, Councillor Woodbine, yeah.
Thank you. Does Council agree with the recommendations detailed in the report? Item 4, the calendar of meetings. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Jabbar to second.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Seconded, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree the recommendations? Thank you. Item 15, gambling policy. I call on Councillor Taylor to move and Councillor Goodwin to second the report.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Any member wish to speak? Does Council agree recommendations in the report? Thank you. That concludes the meeting, but I'd just like to thank everybody for their how we behaved tonight. It's been excellent, I think, in general. Thank you. Well, thank you all.